and Zoom recordings of study sessions will be available online within a few days following the meeting. Before I start with the first item, under information only, council, as you can see, as you went through your packet, we have a lot today on the agenda. So some that aren't on to the agenda for next week, information only. So I suggest, you guys we're all in this together. I'd like to be done by 9 o'clock, including with the executive session, because after 4 hours, you kind of get punch drunk. If there's a better term for that.
Are.
All right, you already are.
Yeah.
So anyways, just keep that in mind. You can always follow up with questions, especially for items that we're not voting on next week. Okay, with that, our first item up tonight, I'd like to welcome our forestry manager, Mr. Sean Walsh, the utility manager, Ms. Cammie Appleback, and representatives from Mason, Bruce, and Gerard here to present items A1, which is a presentation on the draft plan for the utility and management plan update.
Thank you. Good evening, council. So we're here tonight to present on the draft plan of the utility land management plan update. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to.
Try again.
Test. Okay. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Wendy and Brent Keller from Mason and Gerard.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. My name's Wendy Wente. I work for Mason, Bruce, and Gerard, and I've been the project manager on this project to update your plan. And I also have Brent Keller here, who is our senior forester on the project. So we have a brief slideshow. I'm thinking I can just share it on the screen that you all can see. It would have been in your agenda packet as well. A brief slideshow to just walk you through the updates to the plan, and then we can answer questions as needed if they come up during the presentation, or we can also do a Q&A session at the end. Just whatever
Let's have
works.
the questions at the end if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do that. So let me share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great, thanks. So this is the meeting to do our draft utility land management plan review with you. Just a little bit of project background. So of course, the city owns and manages approximately 8,000 acres of utility lands, and about 3,000 of that are the Union River watershed. And so the city has had this land management plan in place before. The last one was from 1996, though, so it's quite dated. And so the city brought us on to provide a new plan. And our plan includes the updated plan itself, but it also includes these special topic memos, which are in the appendices, and they cover standalone issues that were specifically of interest to the city at the time that we were developing the plan. So a brief overview of the project schedule. In December of 2024, we had an advisory committee meeting. So that's what the AC stands for, where we went over the special topics. And then through the spring, we had a study session with the city council on the special topics. And then in May, we finally reviewed the draft plan with the advisory committee. And so we were able to present that to them and collect any comments that they had on it. And so now we're here at the June 2025 City Council study session to review the draft plan with a simultaneous release for public comment, which is happening currently. And then in July, we'll go over the final updated plan with the City Council in your City Council meeting, and we can have incorporated any feedback that we received from you all during this the public review period. And then our final updated plan, we're hoping to be presenting that to the City Council in August. So it's coming right up by the end of this summer. A plan overview. I'll give you a brief overview and talk a bit about the special topics, and then I'll hand it over to Brent to go into a little bit more detail on some of the topics that were of greatest interest. So what does the plan include? It has land management goals. It covers how you will maintain your unfiltered water source status, since that's a key goal. And the second key goal is generating revenue in the context of protecting your water resource and protecting forest health. We also covered the existing conditions, kind of like a baseline section of the plan. And this is a description of your property, water uses, and infrastructure structures that are present out there. We completed a watershed assessment, which looked at various resources, including things like wildlife or riparian areas that are out on the property. And then we also included a forest resources assessment, which is an inventory of your forest, what the road system is like out there, and some harvest planning. Continuing on, we came up with a sustainable harvest level. These are a set of calculations that are made for specific areas in the sub-basin. Then we included an implementation plan, which goes over, it describes harvesting methods, reforestation, some adaptive management elements. And then we also discussed the forestry capital improvement plan, which is your water rate analysis, and it also includes capital improvements such as roads, bridges, and buildings. And then the special topic memos that I mentioned. So as far as the special topics, there are 9 of them. We originally started with 8, and there's one that's italicized that we added when it came up as a special issue. The first one is security. There's adjacent land use and potential conflicts. There's the utility impacts from the proposed Jarstead Park to Kitsap Lake Trail. And then sustainable timber harvest alternatives. And again, as I mentioned before, Brent will touch on some of these briefly. And then the water rate impacts for the timber harvest revenue. And secondarily, water rate impacts of a filtration plant. So if you did need to install a filtration plant, how would that impact your water rates? Then potential revenue generation via carbon crediting, and a 20-year forestry asset capital improvement plan. And then finally, we completed a staffing level evaluation for the plan. And the topics that generated the most discussion during our earlier advisory committee meetings were these water rates, maintaining the unfiltered status. There were a number of security challenges that we've discussed. And there were, of course, potential impacts of the proposed trail, and then sustainable harvest and adaptive management practices, just differences in how we approached that, opportunities for carbon credits, and then maintaining tribal access. So these were specific issues that came up that are addressed by special topics. So at that, I will pass this over to Brent to kind of go through a little bit more detail, and then we can do a Q&A.
Good evening. Looking at the water rate impact special topic, rate increases depending on the level of timber harvest. Obviously, the more you harvest, the lower the rate increase. Rate increases are like 30 to 50%. Depending, if you didn't harvest at all, you'd have the greatest increase. And if you're at a 50-year rotation, it should be the most aggressive harvest. It'd be closer to a 30% increase over the next 10 years. In the middle there is the orange line is the current harvest level. And just above the bottom light green line is a 60-year rotation, which extends rotation a little further, but results in less annual harvest. So here you can see, and we'll talk about the trail a little bit further in the presentation here, but which would be the main driver of potentially needing to install a filtration plant. If that was the case, you'd see cumulative rate increases in the range of 100 to over 500%, depending on the type of filtration plant. These are, of course, just estimates. But you see on that graph, what we're looking at it on the last slide with timber harvest ranges, those lines are all bunched up there at the bottom, 30 to 50% range. And then the low and high range of the treatment plant costs are the other two lines there. So pretty dramatic. Security was of interest. That's a special topic where we looked at the current security infrastructure out there. You know, security with the watershed is very important in terms of maintaining you know, sanitary conditions and regulating who's in and out of the watershed. So we looked at gates and adjacent properties and the security systems that are in place and presented recommendations as part of the plan. Adjacent land use, potential conflicts. You know, you've got the large development right against the watershed. That probably stands out the most as a challenge going forward. There's also industrial tree farms, government lands, utilities, tribes. Those are a little bit more benign neighbors, but that can change over time. And so you need to have, you know, ongoing collaboration with these folks, no matter the type of owner. We looked at possible acquisition opportunities for adjacent lands. What you'd most like to target is those in the Union River drainage and those within wellhead areas. So probably the hottest topic of interest is, in terms of special topics, is the Jarstad Park to Kitsap Lake Trail. We looked at potential impacts on security, the unfiltered water, surface water status, current operations, and how that'd be affected, and staffing as well. You see pasted in the middle of the slide there is a letter from Department of Health advising on the potential impact of a trail to the unfiltered source water status.
An addendum.
And we looked at the cost and what, not necessarily with the trail, but the costs, associated costs with the trail. You have to increase staff for enhanced security. There'd be improved infrastructure related to security, enhanced security and monitoring. For example, one side of the trail fenced, we estimated could easily get towards $1 million. So, and that's just what we're anticipating. I'm sure once the trail isn't installed, there'd be additional challenges that would become evident. So we looked at recalculating the sustainable timber harvest alternatives. And here's a real simple summary. You know, clearly, if you didn't harvest at all, there's no revenue. The current program harvests a little over 1 million feet, and that brings in a net revenue of about $500,000 on a 50-year rotation. It's important to point out here that in the course of calculating things, we boiled it down to a limited Union Basin harvest that would not exceed a fixed amount. So of what equates to 750,000 board feet a year. And so the 50-year rotation calculation is based on lands outside of the Union Basin harvest area. So a 50-year rotation with a limited Union Basin harvest would yield an annual volume of 2.75 million board feet with an annual estimated revenue of about $1.25 million. In a 60-year rotation, The further you push the rotation out, the less you harvest. Would be at about 2.35 million board feet and a little over $1 million in revenue.
Mm.
We looked at potential revenue generation via carbon credits. This is of interest
Right.
to a lot of folks. That can be very challenging being a smaller property in terms of generating credits and having that be a net income to the city. You know, it's very expensive to get a program started, and then there's required ongoing monitoring and reporting costs, and also based on the type of timber and the type of program already in place, it could be, you know, additionality is a big part of generating credits, and that could be there could be less potential for that with the city's watershed. Maintaining tribal access, very important. That was covered in security processes and procedures, special topics section. Specifically for the Squamish tribe, who would like to formalize access to harvest western red cedar bark and other forest products. The city's currently reviewing the process and documentation needed to develop a formal agreement. We open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you. So Jennifer, go ahead.
What is this? Okay, I'm just kind of like looking through harvest method options. And I'm curious about a definition of a small clear cut. What is that? What is that defined as?
Well, that would be where all trees are removed, except for trees required to be left per the forest practices rules, trees that are required to be left along streams and buffers.
And I understand. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And of course, what is small is
Right.
relative to your management approach. And I don't know, I think what Sean could probably speak to what the maximum clear cuts have been. I would guess you're more in like that 40 to 50 acre range. The maximum clear cut you can have in Washington is 240 acres, which you'd see with like industrial folks, but
Yeah, Brent, I'll jump in on this. So as Brent mentioned, 240 is what you're legally allowed to do. We try to essentially focus, we're right around 18 or 20 acres, usually for clear cut size.
That would be a small clear cut.
That's a small clear
20
cut.
to 80 acres.
So, no, 18 to 20.
18 to 20, sorry.
Yeah, so,
That would be more. Okay.
yeah.
All right, so 18 to 20
Yeah,
acres.
and Brent mentioned harvest planning, so that's kind of what we go into consideration is there's challenges, you know, associated with you try to get into too large of a size. So we try to keep it small, and it also helps, you know, we spread it out so that it's not all within one area. So if you're an industrial landowner, you know, it makes sense for them to have, you know, larger clear cuts because operationally it reduces cost, right?
I think that I was just particularly just curious what a small clear cut would look like, and if that is, it's under, it looks like it's kind of recommended, right? A salvage small clear cuts and thinning. And so I wanted a good definition of what a small clear cut would be, and 18 to 20 acres does feel like a lot for a clear cut.
Well, yeah.
Personally, I'm not a forestry manager.
Sure, and
So-
so you just got to remember it's 8,000 acres, right? So it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around how large of an area that is, but usually that ends up, my math isn't great, but we're usually doing about 60 acres of harvest spread throughout normally. That's still only, my math is right, less than 10%
80,000.
divided by,
You said 80,000 acres?
or sorry, 8,000
8,000 acres.
divided by 60.
And then the industrial tree farm, is that Uland? that adjacent?
Yeah, they would be an example of an industrial landowner or your Rainier or warehouser.
I was on the trail recently. It was over by Zach's Lookout, and I found one of the entrances to the Casad Dam, and then I could only tell it was because the sign was upside down, knocked over. I'm curious what the security is like, because I've been told that it can be pretty tight, but there's like listening to all those access points. I don't know how you could even secure every one of them.
Yeah, and all so for the security, special topic, that's what Mason Bruce and Gerard looked at, right? Is they looked at our current status of our gates, as Brent mentioned, and things that need to be improved, along with the different procedures we do. I don't want to go into too much detail in what we do in terms of security because it's a sensitive information and
Sure.
try not to, but we do have a stringent security protocols, and I realize, sometimes signs fall down, it's out in the woods, and that is something that, Mason Bruce and Gerard,
I was very
recommend.
tempted to climb over that fence just to find out, but I didn't. I was
Somebody would be there
urge.
to take a picture.
And well, I'd just be like, well, I am the city. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
But
I'm sure Tammy's more than happy to give you a.
I
formal
think
tour
I need to,
anytime.
well, I need to go again. But I was just thinking about how unsecure some of those spots are and how hard it would be to secure all the locations from people coming in. And this was, off the beaten path. This was not an established trail system. This was, a trail system that was adjacent to another trail that is local, anyway, it was on a 15K, 20K route. So it was like way far out there. But just thinking about all the access points, I just was, even more concerned with how to keep it secure. And I think other issues coming up with population and development make me even more leery about how to keep this resource secure and our water pristine.
Yeah.
Thanks for the information. I'm sure other people want to ask questions.
Could you remind me, I know we've been told this, who sits on the advisory committee?
So I'll get the list just to make sure I'm saying the correct people, but it's a group of people that were essentially people that have either related to the Department of Health was one person. We had two ratepayers that were designated by the mayor. We had a representative from the Squamish tribe. We had adjacent landowners, and then we also had fish and wildlife. So essentially stakeholders that are involved in the kind of the forestry world or the regulatory side of things, along with ratepayers.
And what's the percentage of each? That's a good grouping, I guess my main thrust is, were the stakeholders, meaning property owners with interest around, they represented as well as the other?
Yeah, so we did have adjacent landowners.
Balance.
Yeah, so that was essentially the structure was what was used in the 96 plan, along with the two ratepayers. So the goal was to have people with technical backgrounds that could help provide recommendations and review the plan and provide feedback. At the end of the day, it's just recommendations, they're just advising, but these are people that are involved in the world. One was a DNR, forester. So people that have kind of the idea of what would be best in terms of scientific practice.
And is that prescribed by the state,
in terms
of membership on that type of committee, or
no,
just?
This was a structure that was done in 96 that we just reproduced.
Okay, nobody from Parks and Rec or anything as far as okay,
No.
Okay. And then wanted to also know, we've definitely been looking at the impact of the J to Trail on the need for a water filtration system. Is there any impact of these degrees of forestry that has an impact on that water filtration?
So I'll say that the Department of Health representative said that keeping it in forest land is the best option for our unfiltered status. They had no concerns, and I'll just point to the special topic memo that talks about the historical harvest practices within the city. We have conducted safe, sustainable timber harvest within the Union Range since the 70s and have kept an unfiltered status.
So at that level, but how about with what the other proposals
And
would be the same?
And we're not going to propose the special topic memo was talked about.
Okay.
So these are levels that we were chosen, and Brent can attest to this. If you're a large industrial landowner, you have an even shorter rotation age, which requires even more harvest. So we made that decision. If water quality is our highest priority, we could be harvesting more, but we do not.
Okay, okay. And then didn't seem to be much difference between the 50 and 60 as far as income, harvest income. What if you're looking at it, I'm asking you as an expert, if you're comparing the kind of the impact of saving those older trees, what's the cost benefit ratio of that if the if the income isn't that significant?
Yeah, and so for the between the 50 and 60 rotation can be pretty significant in terms of tree growth. And the way sawmills are being geared up now, they're being more utilized and optimized, but they're looking for smaller logs.
Okay.
And so by going to a slightly shorter rotation, we have a more opportunity to be able to get rid of those logs and essentially market that wood versus if we were to go to a longer rotation. And Brent, I don't know if you have
I see. So the younger tree, a 50-year-old tree is smaller than a 60-year-old tree and therefore could fit the mills.
Correct. A little bit
Okay,
better.
okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I think one key thing to point out there as far as the filtration status and the harvest level goes is that's fixed within the basin. So all this, the 50 and 60-year level and what goes on outside the basin, there's decisions to be made there, but we fixed we fixed the volume inside the basin and then did our calculations just using the acres outside the basin. So very conservative harvest level within the basin that would and that would be the subject of the Department of Health's focus in terms of filtration status, I believe.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go Anna, Jeff, and then Jane. And then also just keep in mind, this is a brief overview. There's a lot in this packet, a lot to read, a lot to digest. And so you don't necessarily have to ask all your questions tonight. I encourage you to follow up with a question if you have it to Sean and City Council. And Sean, I assume you'll answer those questions. It's going to go out for public comment. It's going to go back to us for study session, and then we vote on. So we're going to have one more bite at the apple for study session. So, Anna.
Okay. As you all know, I have multiple pages of questions. I will send them to you by email, almost all of them. Tonight, I'd just like to remind everybody that since we, this council, are the governing body of the water utility, our comments carry considerable weight. And so I just wanted to address 2 or 3 issues. All the rest will be in an email. It's my little present to you guys. On page 47 of your document, Brent, you talk about harvest planning, and I looked at all the different harvest method options, and I was wondering why none of these options is evaluated for its effect on water quality, which is, of course, the primary goal.
I don't have the plan in front of me, so I'm not sure what 47 is.
It's harvest planning on.
It was just the description of the different silvicultural options, Brent. So that it discusses the clear cut versus the shelter wood versus the commercial thinning, and just kind of has the breakdown of what each of those harvest methods are.
Yeah, and it addresses them in terms of marketable timber, but not the effect on water quality. I was wondering why that was, since that's the primary goal.
Yeah, the entire plan is geared in the context of water quality. I think there's a lot that goes into the water quality that isn't where the harvest method isn't the factor as much as the season it's harvested in, the size of the opening you're creating, what it's adjacent to, the stream buffering. That I was just, I think, laying out there that these are the different methods of even age management that you can apply to harvest. And then how those affect water quality is a separate, I think, part
Yeah,
of the practice. But
is it in this report somewhere? Because I was unable to find it. Okay, that will be an email question.
I'll just, if it's all right, I'll chime in on that. So I think in the plan, we state several times that our main goal is water quality.
Yes.
We're not going to suggest anything in terms of something that's going to put water quality at risk. And I think that's what Brent's trying to express. In terms of impact on water quality, we've conducted all these harvest options within our ownership, and we've been able to keep our unfiltered status. And I think, as Brent stated, it's not really the method. He was just trying to describe what each one does. It's more of how you execute that. And that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of all the different aspects to make sure that we're not putting any sort of risk to the water quality.
Okay, so like cable logging in the winter, for example, as compared to clear cutting in the summer, would be equivalent impacts?
And that's where we look at each of the methods, and that's what essentially we're trying to say with that harvest planning is we got to look at each of those aspects. And my job as the forestry manager to make sure it's an option that does not put water quality at risk.
I am trying to move through these, but I'd like to address that more later in the email. I'd like to specifically address the area towards the northeast of the reservoir where the 66-year-old trees are. That graphic is not included in this packet, but that's the correct location, yeah?
So it is included in this packet. So it was related to the harvest method, or sorry, the sustainable harvest option special topic.
Map is,
Yeah.
What page is that map on? Okay. And while you're doing that, I will note that on other maps, this seems to be an area that has moderate to high and also extremely steep slopes. And it also seems to be, quite happily, these older trees are not subject to laminated root rot, which is also pretty great.
Right.
I know. So, did you find the map in here?
I'm scrolling.
Okay, cool. So, all right.
So I think you're looking for page 103 in the plan. So that's strictly just showing the inventory information.
One moment, please. Your call will be connected.
The PDF page. I think it's because you're discussing that area to the north of the reservoir, talking about the different kind of board footage.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, the volume distribution map. Yeah. Yes, so that is the area that I'm talking about. So it does have all these delightful qualities, so yay. Thank you for finding that for me and for being right. So that's really all I wanted to say during this meeting is that these trees where the urgency is that pretty soon they'll be too large for most sawmills, that the transport costs will offset the marketability. So that's the push to market them. And of course, a 66-year-old tree would be worth more than a 25-year-old. It's also on extremely steep slopes and it has no laminated root rot. And it is the conviction of every agency that the forested cover is giving us our unfiltered water.
So that's
what you said earlier.
That is correct. So
okay.
Keeping it as forest, but in terms of the question of the impact of that area specifically, so for the reservoir itself, right, we have that 250-foot buffer that's no harvest that protects the reservoir. In terms of the contributing area, as Brent mentioned, we're limiting the harvest to 25 acres. That's a year, and it's spread out throughout the ownership of the Union drainage. In terms of concerns of slope stability, yeah, absolutely. There are some very steep slopes in our ownership, especially near the reservoir. But there's a lot of concern with those areas, and we avoid those areas, and we can with the harvest planning, as Brent can probably comment of, you take all those areas out and take that into consideration. You know what's out there, and go out into the planning when you go to cucumber harvest. So I understand your concerns, and I'll just preach again that we're not going to propose something that's going to put water quality at risk. I understand the importance of water filtration, and these lands are vital to the city, and I understand that.
Okay. I'm gonna stop after 2 more questions. Hey, that's not bad for me. For me, this is pretty good. Okay, hey, did you have any comparables of other municipalities that have unfiltered water?
So in terms of activity or
The effects of clear cutting on?
So in terms of having an unfiltered surface water source, it's few and far between. We didn't really have a comparison in terms of looking at that impact. The ones that we usually look at are the city of Seattle and the city of Tacoma, as well as the Portland watershed, but they are much larger areas, and we have the advantage of owning most of our watershed. I know the city of Tacoma and the city of Portland are pretty envious of that.
Okay. Last question is really just a comment, which is there's a lot in here about the control of noxious weeds like Scots broom. Scots broom does not grow in the deep forest. It's a plant of the open sunlight. So it's after clear cutting, it's something that you'll often see come in. We're all done. Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, Jeff.
Just not bad. Not just a quick one. I just want to make sure I'm reading the recommendation on the J to Trail correctly. Is that essentially the memo is not saying it can't happen. It's saying that we want a comprehensive feasibility assessment that takes into account all the risks. And as I look at the Department of Health memo, it doesn't seem, obviously the concern for the Department of Health is humans trespassing onto the land, not if they stayed on the trail and behave themselves. But it doesn't go into detail on if we were to build a fence along the portions that we're able, if that would meet the criteria. And so I just want to make it clear, if the memo is encouraging bigger feasibility analysis, that would be in discussion with the Department of Health and would include possibly down the line, hey, this is what the security we think we could put in place reasonably, and is that good enough to keep our unfiltered status?
So the Department of Health is not going to come out and say, if you put a fence there, that's sufficient. What they're going to say is, you're introducing more risk than your previous posture. Therefore, you're going to have to put security measures in place. Those are not necessarily, you don't send them to them for approval. They're just telling you you're going to have to do everything you can to protect that, with the understanding that if you do not sufficiently protect it, you will go to unfiltered, you'll go to filtered status. They're not going to give their blessing on a trail. They're going to say, you can choose, because we own the land, the utility owns the land, we can choose what we want to do with it. But if we cannot prove through our actions that we've sufficiently protected it, if we're suddenly having more trespass issues, if we're suddenly having more little fires pop up associated with the use of that trail, then we will lose our unfiltered status. And so I can tell you a fence, in my opinion, is not sufficient. A fence, we've seen people cut them. We've seen them climb over them. You can throw a lit cigarette butt over a fence. What I'm saying is we've recently had fence cut and stolen from us. People are cutting and taking the fence. It is not a fail-safe. So we would have to do more than fencing. Fencing would be your very first step, but certainly it would not be enough. But I want to clarify, DOH is in no, they're not the permitting agency on what land improvements you do on your property. You can choose to do that. The understanding is, if you are not able to sufficiently protect it and control your source, then you will have to go to filtered status. And their letter is just saying, recognize that you are introducing a much higher level of risk, and it's very difficult to mitigate that risk fully. And so they're just saying, be aware
Gotcha.
that you're putting that at risk.
So for any potential change in the future, whether it's a trail or, you know, we talked about folks coming in from nearby development and building.
Yeah.
Let's say we have some new homes built somewhere nearby and they started trespassing and setting fires. As by my understanding, Department of Health would start saying, whoa, you've got this popping up. How are you gonna take care of it? And then if we don't take care of that, we lose it. So it's an escalating conversation, it sounds like.
Well, we cannot control what other landowners do with their property. That's not within our control, but we can control what we do with our property.
Right.
But you're right. I wanted to add earlier when you were talking about, that must be really challenging to secure all those gates. You're absolutely correct. And when one of the topics of this assessment was looking at the challenges of developing areas adjacent to the watershed and how that has increased the difficulty to secure it, because it is as easy as someone stepping over the gate or riding their bike around it. We've seen it all, and it becomes much more difficult. And that's why that was an area that we looked at and assessed in this update. Can we improve security to address that additional activity now? But it is a challenge. It is very difficult.
Right, but just what we're going to clarify is just the steps of Department of Health is regularly reviewing any incidents reported in the watershed area.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And then if they see things of their concern, they reach out and they say, we are concerned this is affecting the water status. What steps do you have? And then they touch base back to see if those steps have been effective. And obviously, if we have multiple ineffective steps and it keeps getting worse, then they basically say you're now longer unfiltered, or they do a study to check or
No, they'll come back and say, this happened to City Port Townsend. It was just too difficult to maintain their source. Of course, they didn't have full ownership like we do. But they ended up having to go to filtration because they just could not sufficiently secure it. And so, it comes down to, we have to, with everything we know, with everything we've observed just by adjacent land use, I think anyone in the police force, if anyone's here, will tell you the closer you bring humans to a place, the more you have.
absolutely got that. Yeah.
So
Just looking
just
for the
as
steps leading up to it. Yeah.
Right, which is why we have so much buffer property.
Right. So then they would say, hey, you've lost your unfiltered status. Here's how you can get it back if you bring your incidents back down. Is that? Yeah.
We are required every year, we produce an annual report to them describing, all of the current status of the watershed, all the improvements we put in place in the previous year, any anticipated challenges in the coming year and what we plan to do about that. We have to report all the authorized access as well as all the unauthorized access that we've tracked. And yes, if they start to see those numbers creep up, there will be a point at which they say, okay, you're demonstrating you can't protect your source sufficiently.
And that's just what they're stating in that letter, because that is Kimmy and I are tracking those along with DPD on those incidents, and if they do see an increase in that, they have expressed concern.
Okay, Jane?
I have two questions. You came to us in the past year to allow a new development to have access through your land, that they could have accessed it from a different point, but it saved the utility, $100,000 by allowing them to have access. So I don't understand.
So I don't know if council remembers, we had an executive session regarding that access road, and I don't want to discuss what we discussed there, but there were other factors playing into why we allowed them to have road access, and at the end of it, it ended up being a net improvement for our security. And as we talked about when I came to present that access, it's outside of City Bremerton limits. We don't have any control on what the development was occurring. It's in Kitsap County's hands. So we had to make a decision as a city, and there were other factors at play that is why we had the road access, and in the end of the day, it ended up being a net improvement for our security.
Okay. Second question is the Navy's train track go through the buffer or through the wetland?
So the Navy goes through the whole ownership of, at least it would be on the eastern portion there. And it comes in and it's mainly on the forest drainage side. It does not come through the Union River drainage side.
So is,
And I want to clarify, that's not, we didn't give the Navy authority to go through, they own that property. We don't own that property. The railroad property, it's on the right of way, they own it. It's not utility land. We had no control of them. That railroad was there as we were buying up utility land around it.
but does the health department have concerns about the Navy
Yes,
having
I mean,
a drain
we
in
had
what
an
they carry
issue.
on?
Mhm. We actually have an agreement with them about what weed control, maintenance control items that they can use that are out in those areas. Now it is the Navy, the federal government, and we do our best to coordinate with them, but they are to report to us if they have spills, if they have any incidents that could impact our, because remember, even though Gorse Creek is outside of the Union River drainage, we have production wells in the Gorse Creek watershed. We're very concerned if there are spills that it could impact our wells. That unfortunately is something that we have to grapple with. It was outside of our control, but we're doing our best to minimize that risk as much as we can.
Okay. I'll just email the rest of my questions.
Sure. Any other questions or comments for this evening? Go ahead.
Real brief, I'm curious if you have an example, and you don't have to provide this for us now, but if you had an example of what a Department of Health improvement plan might look like. And this, I mean, I'm sure, like, if we're talking about Port Townsend, right, as an example of, and if you're, a city that lost their filtration. I'm sure that there were steps that were taken, such as an improvement plan, like we received X amount of complaints. Is there some documentation you can provide so that you would know what that improvement plan would look like?
I am not certain that they provided an improvement plan. They, like us, when
Or
they were
warning
unfiltered,
system.
they would just be reporting in their annual report in the number of incidents and the issues and the attempts that they should made to secure that property. So
Utility might have to draft the plan,
the
right? Like,
there is no improvement plan that you produce that you send to DOH and they approve.
They just are like, you've had 22 complaints, so you're now filtered.
It's not that cut and dry.
Okay, right.
They don't look at okay, you've reached this certain number and now you've tipped it over. What they're looking at is your history of being able to protect each year. Are they seeing a significant increase each year?
There's no rubric.
There's no rubric.
There's just somebody who's,
Yes.
okay, direction.
I just want to say, I think when Sean was talking about the advisory committee members, I don't think that you mentioned that DOH was on the advisory committee, but they were, and they've been engaged through this whole process and they're comfortable with the recommendations that are outlined in this.
So there's strict, they have to revoke your filter status if you reach certain requirements for certain contamination. So,
Well, contamination is one, but it is increased, how do I want to say it, or decreased ability to secure and limit access. And so part of that annual report that we submit, they also come out and conduct an annual inspection.
Okay.
And that letter is actually the report of their observances each year when they come out and they inspect.
I think like just as, you know, a member of this kind of, I think like hearing the threats coming from the federal side about things just happening, you know, willy-nilly without any rhyme or reason, I think I'm just feeling a little cautious and wanting to know the process of what that looks like, of what a revocation of filtration status actually looks like. What is the process by which it happens? Is there just somebody that pushes a button, or is there a warning system? Is there X amount of complaints that happen? And so I think that's important for me to understand so that I can decide whether or not I want to support a J to K trail with a fence as securing. And just, you know, side note, I mean, people are in the middle of Bremerton and Madrona trails taking Madrona trees. So I believe somebody could go out to this trail and take fencing. So I get that. I don't know how much fencing is actually been taken, but I mean, it does happen. I mean, you know, things like that do happen. But thank you. That's all. I'm sorry to keep us longer on that.
No worries, Anna. You wanted one more bite at the apple?
Really quickly, all of the revenue that would be generated by any of these various scenarios would go to the water utility only. Yeah. And second and last question is, even under the no harvest, which is the lowest revenue scenario, your ending fund balance set 10 years out is $7.5 million.
So water fund is healthy.
Yeah.
Can't
Thank
deny
you.
that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so, before we let go of this, if you have a follow-up question, please send it to our city council address. They will forward it to Sean and Cami for the response. And then you respond back to city council, and staff will take care of it. We're not gonna piggyback. You'll see the answers, but we're not gonna follow up on those because then we've got a rolling form. So we're all clear on that. Okay. Thank you very much. for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'd like to welcome YMCA Executive Director Denise Landis and Director of Operations Harold Shea here to present item A2, which is the update on the Glen Jarstad Aquatic Center.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Which is not excellent.
I apologize, Harold's not here. He's on bereavement. So, yeah, so he sends his regrets, but wanted to be a part of it. So, Christine's going to be driving for me with the presentation up on the screen, but it's all in your packet. Really what I'm here for is just to give you a quick overview of what's transpiring at Glen Jarstad and give you a quick update. So, as I said, my name is Denise Landis. I'm the Executive Director for the Bremerton Family YMCA Marina Square Express Y, which is extremely exciting. I've been with the Y for 35 years, and my career actually started within YMCA Pierce and Kitsap counties, but I left this association. I came back in 2010, August 2010, to transition the operation of the city pool for Glen Jarstad into YMCA Pierce and Kitsap. So I've had the opportunity to be the Senior Aquatics Director, work with Jeff, get things transitioned over, and then come back and now lead the Bremerton Family YMCA. So I'm just going to give you some quick updates as far as, so why we're here tonight, just wanted to set YMCA of City, or YMCA and the City of Bremerton in the partnership, operating Glen Jarstad Aquatic Center wine to celebrate that. It's been 15 years almost. It's amazing. So originally started out with a 10-year contract. We have now ventured into a 3-year contract with 5 one-year renewals. So I believe we're in our 3rd year renewal now. I want to give you a little overview on our community impact and the access, the current building conditions, and then it's okay. It's okay. I have great news. I have a light at the end of the tunnel. So, as you are aware, we're a mission-driven nonprofit. We've been serving Bremerton community for over 100 years as an armed services YMCA. The Armed Services YMCA merged into YMCA of Pierce and Kitsap counties back in 2010. And so we have now become this full YMCA that is serving the Bremerton community and continues to do a good job focusing on youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. And we're committed to ensuring access for all. That is accomplished by a couple of different ways. One, we have our community days, which is the first Saturday of every month. Plus, there's a voucher that's available for all Bremerton residents to be able to utilize the Y once a month. So it allows access, plus we have financial assistance in there. So a proven partnership for community wellness. Like I said, it was 15 years of collaborating between the City of Bremerton and YMCA. A shared commitment to health, safety, and access for all. And it's taken time, but we've honored the trust and results built over time. Because of 2 organizations coming together, we've had to partner, we've had to trust, and we've had to be transparent and come to the table and have some hard conversations, but also get some results. So, nonprofit approach prioritizes community impact and sustainability. So for serving Bremerton, just wanted to give you some numbers. So our average facility monthly usage in 2019, that's pre-COVID, was 15,932. And then you can see jumping down to 2025, our year-to-date monthly average is 19,798. which demonstrates a 20% growth over 2019. So that's coming back from the pandemic and then going forward. So in 2024, just last year, we served 3,708 youth in swim lessons. And then an additional 401 participated in our Safety Around Water. Safety Around Water is our third grade swim program. So every third grader gets the opportunity to participate in swim lessons. And then we have active partnerships with the Bremerton School District and local service agencies. So this is where it's going to shift a little bit. I'm going to talk about equity and access right now, and it's just our community partners. So we partner with the Bremerton School District, Navy, Fire Department, Special Olympics, and Scouts merit badge testing. They're able to come in and get their tests, do their water section, and get their badges in Scouts. We're also the community hub. We create a sense of belonging. Our membership is 6,000, just over 6,000 individuals, and we pull from basically a 5 to 7 mile radius of the Bremerton family Y. So really close proximity. It is our community, and we ensure that we have scholarships so we can reduce the rates and ensure affordability. So the Glen Jarstad Aquatic Center current conditions. So we're going to hang on this slide just a tad. So we have an aging building infrastructure and deferred maintenance. We have heavy community member usage, and safety operational improvements are needed to sustain service levels. So current update is an RFQ process was started in January of 2024. That was when Jeff Alvarado was still here. The plan was to be completed in April/May of 2024 to move forward with our building assessment of Glen Jarstad. Due to transition, it happened, it's life. Due to transition, it's been placed on hold and will be picked up again sometime this year. Okay, Tim is fully aware of it. So he's right there. He's fully aware of it. But these are some pictures. So the crack at the back wall, you'll notice, that's at the back deep end of the aquatic center. And that wall actually was starting the top two rows were tilting in or tilting towards the pool deck. So
Doesn't have to have soil behind it.
yes, there's a hill right behind it pushing. So yeah, as a result, so that happened. And then we had a piece of the ceiling actually fall. And so as a result of that, we were able to reach out to the city and we brought in masonry people to get the masonry work done. And this is currently what our back wall looks like. Is they knocked out the first 2 layers or 2 top rows and created this hole up there. And that's done throughout the back of the pool. And they just removed some of the superficial facing, I guess I would say, just to make sure it was safe. The top right picture is the outside of the building from the roof. So that is where the windows are over the deep end of the pool. And you can notice the crack and then it's caving in a little bit. As a result, the top building is starting to add pressure to the windows, which in turn is starting to add the pressure to little superficial cracks through the windows. So moving on to the next screen. This is what transpired during the month of May or April, during the month of April. So this is our surge tank. A surge tank is definitely needed to help with our filtration of the water. So it's located in the pump room, holds gallons of water, and our water goes through there and goes through the filtration and then enters back into the pool. Off to the left is not a picture from Star Wars. That is literally looking at the outside of the surge tank and that little light is the inside of the surge tank. So water was coming through that. We worked quickly on it, started to get a leak. 2 o'clock, I'm on the phone. Tim was out of the office, but I was on the phone with Brian, and by 4 o'clock, 4:30, he had a contractor there that day. The contractors are, you can see them working in welding. They cut out a section of about 18 inches by 92 inches of the surge tank, removed it, welded it back together, and we are back in operation. This took just over 3 weeks. If it was not for Tim and Brian and their ability to work quickly and their willingness to be transparent, come to the table, show up with us, work together to figure it out, we would not be open today. So it's a huge kudos and huge shout out to Tim and Brian for they expedited this and they were able to make it work. And we're really looking forward to continuing to work alongside them to ensure that our building continues to thrive. So we're going to go ahead and so we've talked already a little bit about equity and access, but a building is just a building, but it takes a community to make it feel like a home. I and the YMCA Person Kids Out County really want to thank Tim Barker and Brian Koshoff for the quick response when the pool surge tank started leaking. Because of their quick response, the transparency, and our teamwork, the pool was able to reopen within about 3 weeks. We are looking forward to continuing to work with the City of Bremerton Parks and Rec Department, and it gives us new hope and new life and how this partnership can be and how we can continue to move forward. So together, we strengthen Bremerton through water safety, health, connection, and building community. So with that, I I had 10 minutes, so I was like, okay, here you go. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
So no worries, Ms. Landis. For the record, I didn't tell you had 10 minutes. So, but we do have a full schedule. Council, if you have a brief question for Ms. Landis, go ahead.
First of all, thank you. And I think you're in District 2, you're in my district.
Yeah.
And so I pay close attention to you. I also work closely with Director Barker around how do we support this thing until we can figure out a permanent solution. This is very reactive, you know, and I just want to put it on council's radar. If you aren't already aware, the YMCA is going full strength up in North Kitsap. And with plans for a new center, possibly a pool, yada, 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 a lot of energy going in that direction. I'm almost hoping that it falls through because I am very concerned about how can YMCA, Pierce Kitsap, I've run nonprofits. You've got a huge capital campaign coming up to build that center up in North Kitsap. We are behind the 8 ball with Bremerton, and I don't like it. I don't like it that we have I'm sorry, though we should be ashamed of this. That this is our property and this is what it looks like and these are the things that are happening. This is our recreation center, folks, compared to a brand new one being planned for North Kitsap. This is a long time coming, and I'm not blaming past, you know, directors. I'm not blaming the YMCA, but we are way past this. I mean, we got to be doing something. So thank you for a very positive presentation. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed. I really am embarrassed of our community center. Our Bremertonians deserve better. Our Bremerton kids deserve better. And I'm not blaming you.
No. I don't
Denise.
take it that way.
I'm just saying.
YMCA Person Kitsap County is committed to having a Y within Bremerton.
I know that. And I'm on the
100%.
advisory. I know that.
And while it may not be in the current location, it may not need to switch locations. The YMCA is committed to staying in Bremerton.
I know
North
that.
Kitsap is an opportunity, and that's still a long ways down the road.
But we're not there yet. And this is more for administration and the mayor,
Mhm.
but we better be talking with that school district about that property on Wheaton Lake, and it's in my district, so I'm gonna just take the stand here and say, that's the property that has the most potential for a new YMCA. And if we could get a collaborative going, once again, with the school district, all that property, I could envision a YMCA there that would be just fantastic. So whatever our administration can do to solidify that relationship with the school district and do whatever we can as the city to push that forward, to support it, we won't be behind. Because they've been doing it in Paulsbo, let me tell you.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the support. Really, what I wanted to do was give you an update of where we are with
I know. But
Glenjarstad.
look at the
And
pictures, people.
Yep. And I appreciate that. But I also wanted to shout out Tim and Brian, because they've been a breath of fresh air for us, and they've really been transparent in coming to the table and having some really good conversations about where we can go. The RFQ will get picked up again this year. So that'll happen, and then we'll get a building assessment. We'll look at the building assessment and we'll start to prioritize and determine what are the next steps. You can't make a plan if you don't know where you're going. And so that's going to happen. And I have full confidence in that. I don't feel it's the carrot, right in front of you. I have full confidence in that. So really, it's to give you an update to show that we've grown by 20% over pre-COVID numbers. We continue to serve the Bremerton community, and we show up every day and we make a difference, and the Bremerton community deserves it. You're absolutely correct. But because of the why, the kids are safer around water, and they have an opportunity to have a community and to build just people in Bremerton in general become that community hub at the Y. And so we knock down barriers. So I appreciate the opportunity to share. And I appreciate the passion, Denise, 100%. 100%.
That's what it takes.
Right. Jeff and then Jennifer, or did I have it the other way around? I don't know who was first.
I was gonna just suggest to save time, if we can request an update on a plan or the plan to plan, and maybe it's part of the pros plan at the, I don't know, whatever the next kind of reasonable study session is. That's light.
Jennifer?
I mean, you bring up an interesting point, Denise, and we're in study sessions, so it's okay if I just do a little cross up. I'm just curious if there's been any conversation with anybody about the school district property. Somebody asked me recently, do I talk to anybody in the school district? And I do not. So I'm just curious about conversations. If we could just like air that out a little bit and talk about the property, talk about the conversations that have been had. I'd like to have an update as well with that.
That'd be great.
I think that would be fair to invite the school district in, have that conversation. What I will share is that they've been in transition as well with the
For sure.
superintendent, right? So the new superintendent begins, I believe, July 1st. So, and they had their levies that they needed to pass and their bonds. So things had to happen. And so I think we're back to a little bit of a waiting game to determine next steps. I know they put together a strategic plan and they're utilizing the property for Almond Jar right now.
Yeah.
And that to build the Almond Jar is going to take a little bit of time, and then there's another school. So I would recommend inviting the school district in to have that conversation.
Okay, which piece is the piece where they're
For the
working on it
mayor,
next
for the
to
mayor to meet with the school
Yep.
district.
Yeah.
I know Director Parker, has a relationship with the school district. Yeah, sorry, Jennifer.
No, I asked you a question too, so thank you. I just wanted to know, like, if you'd had conversations with the school district or anything like that.
My understanding is the advisor that's trying to get some momentum built with this. A lot of momentum ended
There's an advisory group that, okay.
for a relocation or so
Ended with a transition in leadership. of the
it
school
didn't
district.
end. The momentum shifted
Shifted
with
to-
the shift of
Gotcha.
superintendent. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And, Again, you said that, Mr. Hausel and Director Barker were, what was that again? Can you say that again? That again, they're,
I just said breath of fresh air.
and you enjoy working with them. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. All right, that's all.
They've been
Great.
great.
Thank you, Ms. Landis, for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, folks, now we're going to go on to agenda bill briefings. First one up here, I'd like to welcome our fire chief, Mr. Pat McGanny, present item B1, which is the ordinance to amend Bremerton Municipal Code Chapter 10.36.010 entitled Compression Brakes Prohibited. Chief McGanny, welcome. I don't think I've seen you for a while.
We missed you.
Where you been hiding out of the fire station?
Oh, you
Yeah,
know,
we've
we're
been-
gearing up for fireworks, so
Yeah.
he's hiding.
You look good. You look good.
We've been a bit busy lately.
right.
Last night was a little rough for her.
Okay, sorry to hear that. Anyway, the floor is yours. We'll stick to the agenda bill.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, before you is, a request to change the BMC chapter 10.36 0.10 to allow for, muffled compression brakes. This hasn't been changed, this code hasn't been changed since, I believe, 1991. So our fire engines and our ladder truck, have compression brakes. We tend to use them for safety. Our ladder truck is just under 80,000 pounds. It helps us stop. Public Works also has some bigger rigs, within the city, the Vector trucks and stuff, and they also, tend to use compression brakes, but all of ours within the city are muffled, so they don't create the big sound that sometimes you hear with a muffled, compression brake. So we are asking for this change.
And this came through, Michael, it came through.
Okay,
Dodge.
thank you. You're the proxy from.
Did.
I'm the proxy.
I'm the vice chair.
She's the vice chair.
All right,
She
very
can be
good.
proxy.
Thank you, Jane.
Not as quick.
Has anybody ever been cited for using compression brakes in the city of Bremerton?
I cannot answer that question. This was brought to our attention by one of our citizens. That I believe was a truck driver brought it to our attention that the BMC stated that we're not supposed to be using compression brakes in this city.
And in the past, compression brakes weren't.
Correct. But it's been a long time. I mean, our 2004, our,
Right, well, clearly it sounds like a housekeeping item.
Yeah.
How do we
Very
want
much
to,
so.
how do we want to treat this item?
Consent.
Consent. Okay, thank you. Chief
Good to
McGann.
see you, chief.
good to see you guys. I'll be back, in a couple weeks with another.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
Next, I'd like to welcome our engineering project commander, Mr. David Dinkin, here to present item B2, which is professional service agreement with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants Incorporated for the Paris Creek Fish Passage Barrier Removal Project. Welcome, Mr. Dinkin.
Good evening, council. So this item is, we're asking for approval for us to hire a consultant to design and permit our culvert replacement on Paris Creek, West Delaware Valley Road. We selected to competitive process Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, and the contract is about $690,749 was negotiated. And this is within our budget for the project, which consists of a protect grant from the government and grant administered by the WashDOT, and $567,000 from the Stormwater Capital Fund and $300,000 from the Water Capital Fund. If we move forward, we'll have design and permitting the project by 2026 with the construction in 2027, which will be a bridge. And
That's a pretty persuasive image.
that's why it's there.
Sorry.
God, we've seen this so many times, I thought.
So Jane, I assume that we discussed this in Public Works?
Numerous times, yes.
All right, ad nauseum, just for the record. Okay. Any questions or comments from the rest of the council?
Nothing fishy with it.
Oh, okay. Anna?
Hi. Okay, planting. I looked through the whole contract and I didn't see anything about planting after the new bridge is installed. To protect the creek banks, I didn't see any short-term erosion control or long-term erosion control.
Well, we have a preliminary, set of plans. Yeah, do I understand that's what you said?
That's all I got.
The consultant will take those into consideration, but they'll probably change significantly, so.
Okay,
We're
there's,
not quite starting, from the beginning, but there'll be, stream restoration, for planting.
okay, that was my entire question for you. And then my next question is, I'm just asking to Melinda and I'll follow up with email, which is, there's no bond on this contract. Why don't we have bonds on contracts? And I'll send you that by email. No need to answer now.
No worries, but that's a consultant. We don't do bonds with consultants.
Bonds for consultant services is for construction.
Yeah,
This is for.
This is,
yeah, it's not for construction. That's
okay,
phase two.
We're gonna design it for.
okay, so we don't do bonds for design, only for, we do them for construction? Yeah.
We get performance bonds, warranty bonds.
Okay, thank you.
bonds,
All of them?
bonds.
Thank you.
Savings bonds.
James Bonds.
Bonds, James.
Okay, thank you. Oh, wait, consent or general business? Thank you, Mr. Dinkin. Next, I'd like to welcome our managing engineer, Gunnar Frederickson, here to present item V3, which is a public hearing and resolution to adopt the 2026 to 2031 six-year transportation improvement program. Welcome, Mr. Frederickson.
Anybody know what page of the packet it starts on?
Yeah, page 242.
243.
Oh, yeah, 242 in the PDF.
Yeah. Sorry.
No worries.
Apologize, by the time it took me to walk up here, to get to this, my computer timed out.
Perfect, of course.
No worries. The Uber driver this morning, on my way back to the airport, inundated me with these dad jokes. So if you need
No thanks.
time fillers,
No thanks.
give us one. Do you want to save me here, buddy?
Just one.
You know, on the Uber app, you can tell them not to
It
talk to
really
you.
helped.
Yes,
Before we
I saw
plunge
that.
into
You
the
can
tip.
use number.
He's got a bunch. He's a practicing dad.
He
So.
doesn't have a book and you do.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is our yearly program that we come up with. We come in front of you every year to do the adoption of the TIP, which needs a public hearing for the RCW. And then we have 30 days to file it with the Secretary of Transportation. And so, rather than go into the whole, tip this year, what we decided to do was just let you know what we did, changes from last year. So changes from last year in tier 1, we moved Paris Creek culvert replacement up from tier 2, as now that, project is fully funded. In tier 2, we moved up the 11th Street corridor design project from tier 3, as it is partially funded. As you may remember, we got design money for that project. And we'll be getting that design money in 2027. In tier 3, we added 2 projects that came out of the transportation element, the 2 concurrency projects, which is the Marine Drive LOS improvements at Kitsap Way and the Corbett Drive intersection improvements. And as we say, saying that they are improvements. We have not fully vetted what they're going to be, if they're going to be a roundabout, signal modifications, or changes that we've got coming. But we know we need to make some improvements to those intersections. We ranked and added Pine Road construction.
Whoa.
And then we ranked and added North Wyckoff construction, 24th to 26th streets. Ranked and added wayfinding implementation, which is going to be phase 2. Phase 1 is just wrapping up right now with new signs around downtown. With that, we incorporated 2 other projects that we had on the list. We had a bridge trail
wayfinding project, and then Charleston area wayfinding project. And so we've combined that all together for one larger project. We also removed two projects. One was the north-south corridor bike path backbone improvements. On that one, when we started really taking a look at the project, it wasn't very clearly defined, and it was redundant to other projects that we had on our list already. So we eliminated it. And it was the same with the East Bremerton shared use path, because we have Clare Avenue and a couple other projects on there that were mirroring it. So we just, as we got into the details on the projects, we found out that they were redundant. And so that was the changes for this year. And then what we'll be looking at for next year, we're looking at standardizing our project summaries so that we'll have the one-page summaries for all these projects next year. We want to score and prioritize projects that are in tier 4 for the bullpen. So we can kind of take a look and see what we should be moving up into tier 3 as those projects move forward. And then we'll also be looking at, once the active transportation plan and the ADA transition plan hopefully get funded and get going here in the next year or so, we'll be adding those projects into the plan as well. And with that, and I believe there's a copy of the tip in the package for you. If I can take any questions or comments. Okay, Jane?
Was the comment of the city engineer that each council member could add a project in their district? Correct?
So when we talked to Public Works Committee, we talked about how do projects get added to the TIP. And I think Denise, you had a comment. I don't think a single council member should add a project.
If it's a public statement.
Yeah, so when we talk about adding a project, it needs to be scoped. If it's not on the tip right now, which it's not part of any plan. It's not like there's nothing that's generated a project. If you want to request a project that doesn't exist on any document right now, then I think you can. And then I think we would evaluate it as a project and then score it and see if it's a tier 4 project or if it's not a tier 4 project. But right now, we wouldn't just add a project to the tip. It doesn't exist anywhere. So, but if you want to suggest one, I think you should be able to suggest one, and we should have a process to evaluate it.
Okay, well, I was just going by the statement that was made. I was under the impression that by requesting a project in each of our districts, that it would go on at least the tier 4 of the tip. But I must have misunderstood that.
I don't think that was the context of, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that was the context of what we were talking about. And there was a request to bring a project up from tier 4 that already was in the tip to tier 3. And really that was primarily what I was talking about, is like, if a council member wants to ask that a tier 4 project be brought up to tier 3, it already exists. And we should be able to bring it up, and it doesn't hurt anything to add it to tier 3.
Right.
It means it gets scored and ranked and prioritized against everything else. And then we see where it lands as, we move forward with funding requests. So hope that is it. Does that answer your question?
It answers my question.
Okay.
And we can go ahead and, Jane, if you want, we can go ahead and add that project into our list and look at that for the next year and score it and do the ranking for it.
It'd be good if we got a written request for the clear scope.
I will.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Okay. Did you have your hand up? Jennifer, go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, wait.
Oh.
Man. Okay, I'm sorry.
You know what? I will see.
And we'll go.
Who's actually next?
Anna, Jennifer, Denise, and sorry, I put you last.
That's
all right.
Well, I'm really happy that there is one project in District 6 that is not triggered by LOS. The 2 blocks there on North Wyckoff, that gives me hope for the future. I would like a project that is in tier 4 to be moved up to tier 3, which is taking a left turn off of Kitsap, off 11th Street onto Calla when you're heading eastbound. That was on tier 4 in the past. I would like it placed on tier 3.
It actually already is.
What is it called
in tier 2, actually.
It's in tier 2. It's the 11th Street project because it's a design project, and that project goes all the way from Kitsap Way to Pacific Avenue. So the design for that project will be done starting in 2007.
It will happen in the
27.
past.
27.
27.
Rocking.
We're gonna wake up tomorrow, it's gonna be old.
So that is, cross your
Yeah,
heart,
maybe you're
Scouts
right.
honor included in the 11th Street corridor.
Part of the design scope
Correct.
that was included in
The
the.
teacher's gonna be like, on June 11th at 6:27 PM, you said.
Thank you, all done.
Yay.
Little dance of joy
Okay,
here.
is it me, is it my
Yeah.
turn?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is, okay, so I'm on, page 2 of the TIF, looking at the unfunded tier 3. What is TR 00203 RRFB on Sheridan? What is that?
It's a single RRB project at Sheridan, I do Sheridan.
I don't know what RRFB means.
Oh, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon.
What?
Those are the yellow
That's
flash
over in my
The
district,
flashers.
over by.
On your side of
Yeah.
Sheridan,
Like
okay.
where we put
Shared,
on
shared
Pacific.
use path.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what
by the
is the
shipyard.
next one down, which is ending in 16, Sylvan Reconstruction SR 303 Pine Road?
Sylvan reconstruction, that is going from basically Pine Road. That is one that operations came up with. That where Sylvan is in pretty poor shape and there's no sidewalks on good portions of it.
Right,
So.
yes, I know this.
Right, so that is. a
And my
project-
constituents talk about it all the time. They can't get to Blueberry Park safely because there's no sidewalks or not wide enough easement that's consistently through that area. I'm sorry, I cut you off. I apologize.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay, thank
It's,
you.
it's basically a road reconstruction project from Pine Road right to.
Is that the kind of thing where there could be looped in, safe routes to school funding perhaps, or something along those lines to have sidewalks there? Is Armitage even gonna be there anymore? Do I have a school anymore? I guess I don't even know.
Well, they
I
have
will-
to
by
do
then-
sidewalks in
It's
front of
going
their
back.
property.
it will go back, but you know, I'm just trying to think how many years is it out? I guess is it 2 or 3 years out from being constructed? 2, okay. Or just a thought, that would be nice, to have something like that looped in. And then, Pine Road construction, can you talk, just, it's pretty generic, but what does that mean?
It's basically about a $12 million project. It starts down on Sheridan Road and goes up to the city limits. And it again is also multimodal, with the roadway itself. We get a number of complaints up there for speeding. There's luckily.
Coming down, I'm assuming, where the most.
Coming down the hill, yeah, and the accident record is actually thankfully very minimal. But we do get complaints for speeding all the time, and we'll be probably looking at trying to do some quick build traffic calming measures there
Right.
over the
You
next
said
year.
12 million?
Yes.
12 million. Why? And thank you for your time in answering this, because I guess I'm not on Public Works, so I don't get to spend a lot of time asking these questions. So, why would
A good
it?
district meeting.
Yeah, maybe we should do that soon too. So, is it a complete reconstruction of those gutters? So that, that's what I'm confused about. What would the reconstruction be? You
It'd
said
be
multiple-
sidewalks, life lanes, so there's nothing out there right now for sidewalks.
I just wonder if there's a less expensive way to do it that would provide the solution for the community sooner. Maybe, I mean, it could be, an easement could be established, you know, or there could be an easier way to just, it doesn't have to be a complete reconstruction to meet the needs of the community, which is just to have a safe walking path.
Shared use path.
Like a shared use path. I mean, I see people have already started to make that. I just wanted to, maybe there's a couple phases that it could be in.
Temporary.
It's something that we can take a look at because at
Yeah.
$12 million, it's a pretty big chunk.
That's a pretty big chunk of change, but that's like a complete reconstruction when there's probably much less expensive, because I know part of the expense is that there's the sewer system, there's the gutter system, there's, water flow has to go down through the outflow. Oh gosh, what is the outflow? I'm never gonna get that right. I'm never gonna get it right.
Falling out. Water falls out.
Like logically, I know this. Everybody is gonna. I will get this before the end of the next term if I. Okay. Well, I just wonder if there's a cheap way to do it besides a big grand gesture, just to meet the needs of the community so that they have a safe walking path. And I'd be interested in just talking with you off, you know, out of council meeting sometime, talk about maybe possible solutions, or who would I talk to about that if I wanted to chat? Would it be you, Gunnar, or would it be somebody else?
It would be me. It would be, we could sit down. We've got the project ranked. It actually ranked fairly well.
Yeah.
43.
Yeah.
We can take a look at that. There are options that we can do. We could do paved shoulder and so forth, but you're absolutely right. With stormwater, when you're
Right.
talking a very long length of like that, we would have to be looking at storm drainage system, stormwater
Which is why it's so
treatment.
expensive.
And yeah, then
and
we're
put
looking at
off.
some pretty good sized vaults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know a lot about public works stuff, admittedly. I would be curious to learn about other methods that could be used to meet the needs of my people sooner rather than later. Thanks very much for letting me indulge in this one.
And then get the
Counselors.
county on board.
Oh, yeah.
Rest of the way.
But most of the
Absolutely.
concern, and you don't have to go to Google Maps to see, all you gotta do is walk a short length, you can see it's that uphill, downhill stretch that's the most concerning. There's a limited sight distance, there's, the white line is starting to fall into the gutter, yeah. There's a lot of, and there's a lot going on with, driveways and with mailboxes and, all the normal things that come with the community. It's very dangerous, and there's an elder community at the top of the hill. Anyway, I'd like to chat later with you about it, and thank you very much.
I think we should talk about what the tip is again. Remember that this is a document that's required annually by WashDOT, and having these projects on the list doesn't guarantee they're going to get built anytime soon. Prioritizing them with the ranking should help us figure out what we should be going after for funding, right? Objectively, ideally. So it's on the list. I think there is time to talk about scope and what the right scope is.
Yeah.
But it's also down the list about 12 or 14 projects.
And I imagine if my constituents, if I help them to learn how to complain about it, that might help.
I think we have a lot already, actually. I think we've been pretty
I
good at that.
bet I could probably help people
So
find
we
a way to
get
use the
speeding
revenue one out.
complaints,
So I
no
feel like this is a call to
sidewalk.
action, and I'm happy to do that for you, so you can see what the need is of my community. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Denise?
I just want to say, I fully understand removing a couple of those things because in my district, because of the projects that are already on the tip that kind of cover those as far as multimodal, all of that. Just want reassurance really that we're covered from the bridge, pretty much up to Rydell with projects. So that, because I think when we talked about kind of a 30,000 foot view instead of just the individual projects, that was the goal of making sure that we were covered from the bridge, end of the bridge, all the way up to Rydell. My understanding is that we are now.
I think
Is
that's
that
fine also.
true?
Yeah, that is true. We've got the current, Myra, phase one.
Right.
Right, and then we've got phase two, so that basically takes everything. From,
Right. And how about
50s,
Sheridan
33rd,
down?
up to Dell.
Yeah,
And then, we've got the Clear Avenue improvements.
Right.
And then we've got the north end of the bridge. I forget the exact name.
connector or
The
whatever.
connector improvements.
Okay,
But there's
so
also
we're all
that trail.
connected. It's all connected.
Yes.
Okay,
And then we also have the, Wheaton Way, improvements.
Right.
Coming up. And that's probably gonna be a road.
okay,
And coming
okay.
up the hill.
But there's the
Okay.
shared use trail that's on the tip for
Yes.
between Sheridan.
Yeah,
No, Sylvan.
Yeah, so.
A road diet on Wheaton Way? Did I hear
No,
you say
they're
that?
talking about when they get off the bridge,
Okay.
the traffic circle.
I think it's
Oh.
covered. I think it's
Okay.
covered.
okay, okay. All right. Thank you. Just one clarification.
Jeff?
Sweet. Actually, first of all, just kudos on the great progress on the project ranking, and I know we'll get kind of those descriptions, but I just see this as such a great step forward in making this understandable and again, less of the individual people touching it. So that's great. For the partially funded for 6th Street and the bridge, are those still considered partially funded and not fully, just because we don't have a full construction estimate for both?
Correct, we've got a little
Okay.
bit of a shortfall with, so we're still looking for that. I don't recall exactly.
We haven't secured the funding yet. Like we're above the line for funding for construction.
Right.
So we've got the funding for design, but we haven't executed the agreement to secure the funding for construction. So
typically look at when it's secured. When it's come to council and the mayor's executed an agreement with the agency, then look at it as fully funded.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we're still working on the scope and maybe the budget, depending on what alternative is selected.
Right.
So.
Okay, that makes sense. Just because I know it was in the, so we made the cutoff in the budget for 6th grade. But
Really
yeah.
great progress.
And then the only other question was, is it possible, I could not find well, I'm trying to go through the old meeting minutes, but the tip from the previous year, is it possible to throw the previous tip in the packet? Just make it clear this is last year's. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to have the list of changes.
Does it need to be in the packet, or can we email it to council for your use? Does it need to be.
That's fine too. I'm kind of, I don't know if we'll get a question.
Actually, it would be in the agenda from last year.
Yeah.
You'd have access to it.
I couldn't quite get it to load, so yeah. I don't know, but whatever the rest of council thinks, I just wonder if folks will want to really stare at it and be like, oh, but that really is.
I'm afraid it would be confusing putting it in the packet.
Email would be good.
Email would
Yeah.
be great.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, it's a public hearing, so see you next week.
It's on consent?
No, can't do that. We consent to let you have a public hearing. Hey, before we take a break, I'm gonna suggest that we cover this last item. I don't think it's a really in-depth discussion, because this is a continuation item, maybe it will. And then we'll finish with agenda bill briefings, and we'll take a 10-minute break. So the next one is the rest of council okay with that? Knock one more.
Yes.
Yes.
This is a resolution to provide guidance to Lodging Tax Advisory Committee for, I'm going to emphasize this is for 2027 funding, not next year's funding, for 2027 funding priorities. I'm presenting, but this wasn't done in a vacuum. So council members Fry and Rivlowski helped me with this, and with the assistance of our city attorney in drafting the resolution. Both the resolution and the summary basically summarize the same thing, which is we discussed this approximately a month and a half ago with the full council, incorporating the recommendations from the Westbrook study that was done in 2024, which is putting an emphasis on attracting one destination marketing organization, focusing on producing and implementing a tourism and marketing plan for the promoting city of Bremerton, and to direct the LTAC to consider funding priority for improved facilities at Pendergast Park. Now, I want to explain why we're saying 2027 instead of 2026. There's a couple reasons. One is, and you, Jane and Denise, you can correct me if I'm wrong in expressing the sentiment here, that it would be too rushed an effort to do an RFP for 2026, which could happen as soon as this month or next month, detailing the minimum standards that we'd like to see a successful organization winning this through the LTAC committee, being awarded through the LTAC committee. Because the city of Bremerton hasn't come up with a criteria yet. If you look at the example for San Juan County, the county lists specific areas that a successful DMO must address before it even goes to the LTAC committee. So I'm envisioning a similar thing. The LTAC committee makes this decision, but this is a criteria, and then our contracts administrator would say, yes, you met the criteria, LTAC committee can consider it. That's the way this should work, I believe. My proposal, our proposal, I believe, would be for the balance of this year, for let's use our staff and have Ann and Christine, who's been on the LTAC committee forever, sit down with the council over several sessions, go over examples of proposals or these organizations. San Juan's one, Gig Harbor's one, and run them by the council and see what we like as far as what we would like to have in our proposal to be met. And they can come up with a criteria. The second thing is on the Pendergast Park. I believe the city's not ready to apply for 2026. There's been changes since the master plan or whatever came out. I want to say, I hate to say it, but maybe 6-7 years ago now. There's a facility that's being built up in Hillsborough, I believe, with the whatever you call it, public utility district money. And so there's all kinds. I think it needs to be updated. We've had some stuff done at Pendergast. So that gives the city time to go ahead and get their ducks in a row. And thirdly, just as importantly, I don't want this to feel like we're pulling the rug under the feet of the people that are already anticipating applying for next year. So this gives them a 1-year notice that things are going to change. We're not going to do business the way we've been doing the business for the last however many years. So that's the plan. I briefly, as you know, I got here like at 5 minutes to 5, so I briefly looked at my emails. I saw something from the Admiral. I didn't have a chance to read the whole letter, but just because the two priorities are here, the Admiral's a contract, and I believe the city's going to honor whatever's in that contract. So even though it's not specifically listed in this resolution, a contract is a contract. Okay? But anyways, I'm opening it up for questions or comments. Denise.
I spoke to Brian yesterday. He called me and I stated the same thing. And that the main change was to, instead of distributing a little money here, a little money there for destination management, we were looking for larger impact. What I do want to make clear for any of those DMO type of organizations out there, you will be competing for this. There will just be one. It won't be, this isn't extra money that's going to go to a single one and then you'll still get some. Some of you will not receive DMO money. That's what you need to prepare for. And I strongly encourage applicants to be cognizant of their infrastructure because it's going to require that. We are looking for a professional organization that is already equipped to meet the needs of a DMO organization. This money is not going to be used to build a DMO, to develop a DMO. This money is going to a DMO to provide those services. So just want to make, as long as we're giving people advance notice, that's what this is all about. And there are organizations out there currently that can do that. So, and there might be some that we aren't even aware of that are able to do that. So I'm very thankful, Eric, for your leadership with, taking this over kind of the finish line. We do want to get this done before you leave council because this has been on your radar for a long time. And that's been part of my motivation, certainly, in making sure we get this across the finish line. But I think this is going to have an incredible impact for Bremerton tourism. The only thing I will also say is that one reason that we've struggled along with this is that we haven't had an economic development lens within the city that recognizes tourism as part of that economic development engine. We will still not have that in this case. This won't be a city position. This is going to be an organization overseen by LTEC. So our role is going to be really important in creating those expectations for the RFP. That's our power. And then we let it go. So just to make all of that clear and understood by council, as well as any applicants that are interested in it.
Jane?
Yeah, I was at a meeting yesterday for FIFA planning, and this topic came up. A lot of people were very interested in getting ready for the RFP. So I think the sooner that we can give the criteria out, the better the applications are going to be for somebody qualified. Like somebody might not have the type of computer program that we think works the best or what others think works the best. So gives people time, and
they better have it before they apply.
Yes, but we have to give people at least a few months warning of what you're going to need. And I think by holding this off till 2027 is a fair way to do it.
So ideally, this is really relies on staff, on what their capacity is, but I'd like to knock this out in the next 2 to 3 months at the most for the criteria. Let's be done with it. If this passes next week. Jennifer.
And just remind me, whose idea was it for this consulting report? Was it for
I
LTAC?
believe it was Denise.
Yes, it was. It was the leadership of
Pushing
Councilor Fry
uphill.
over here
Uphill.
who got this report for us.
That is
and,
$12,000 I ever got.
Right, and that's a small amount of money, and it's going to have a huge impact on the way that we do LTAC. So thank you very much, Councilor Fry, for your leadership in that.
Thank you. Cassie.
And focusing, just like helping focus these funds to be more effective. There's nothing worse than seeing like, I know there's some crazy seagull activity happening out there. I don't know. Is it mating season for seagulls? I don't know.
Oh,
Whatever.
maybe.
But I got us off track for a minute. We're about to go to break, but thank you very much for that, Denise. And I don't know, we'll see what next year brings. But if I do get to work with LTAC again, it'll be nice to have this on their radar. And I really appreciate the fact that you're going to put some time in there for people to get used to the new idea of, the changes. There's some people that have really used LTAC funding for years, and they'll have to get used to that source not being available for them. I think I do have a concern for, and what we tried to do, but it wasn't really very effective, is we tried to bring in some of these like other events to apply for resources and different cultural events around our community, and it just didn't catch on like we had hoped. And so to find this more direct way to focus the services, I think it's going to be the small amount of money that we're getting through this. I think it's going to be great. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Anna, then Jeff.
Okay, thanks. Well done. You kept on pushing on this. Really well done. This study could have lain on a shelf forever. So it did not, and
Not even a year.
that is down to the respective Councilor Fry.
Councilmember New, Council President.
All that stuff, yeah. Well, yeah, both you guys, well done. I do have the one question on the recommendation.
Not bad. No, just get on with it.
Come on, I wanna.
Give Anna a minute and she never gets any time. So I did dangle that break thing before we started. Go ahead. Oh. Anyway, it seemed like a better thing to do biologically. So recommendations listed in order of importance. I think that these recommendations are all great for generating and increasing and have tourism and having a brand. So my question is something that has kept coming up, which is contractors are living in our hotels. So where are these people gonna stay? And is that gonna be outside the scope of this?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
They can still live
They've got, yeah.
We're still getting lodging counts from them, is my understanding from Mike Riley.
Yeah.
Because of
Not
the way
over
the
30
system
days.
is set up.
This isn't focused on the
Right.
revenue at all.
Yeah.
This is putting the city council instructing the LTAC, these should be the priority considerations when giving outlays for lodging tax money.
So,
One and two.
yeah, so on another prong of this, just putting a fork in it, I think we as council might well devote some time to like figuring out what to do about having lodging downtown and additional lodging in Bremerton. And I also really want to commend whoever it was that included the Pendergast Park Sports Complex. That was really great.
That was mentioned.
It was in the study though,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
this is the
Yeah.
beauty of this.
Yeah.
This isn't three people with an axe to grind. We spent money on a consultant, a
Yeah.
professional.
Yeah.
That knew Bremerton.
Yeah.
And is a consultant in this industry. And she said, we recommend this. We read it as a whole, and I believe we said, yeah, that makes sense. And now we're just putting it into action. So,
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I really liked it that she talked to two people.
Except for Brian Johnson.
Sorry, Brian.
Are we done on?
All done, yeah.
Okay, Jeff?
Appreciate all the hard work in this, but I do have several significant concerns, suggestions. So with single DMO, absolutely love that idea. But two things I want to bring up, and it doesn't have to be in this resolution, but one is, how do we hold folks to account? Because I can say there have been KidSat funded DMOs that, you know, don't, I would say, adequately do what they have said they're going to do.
Where's the data?
Yeah, sure. So can I respond to
No,
that?
please, yeah.
So in the, I believe it's in the San Juan and also in the Gig Harbor one, they'll say what criteria and what are your measurables? And the other thing is, this is something for council discussion and talking over with legal, is that we can award, this can be awarded for more than a 1-year period, because that's a heavy lift for DMO to do. So I think Gig Harbor, when they did it recently, it was a 2-year deal. But there's gonna be metrics that you're gonna say, this is what I can measure. And then it's up to the LTAC committee to say, look at the applications when it comes up for renewal and say, did you meet those criteria? And they're gonna be able, hopefully, to be able to have solid numbers that can be verifiable. It's not like kind of our current practice where we have more stays than we have hotel rooms in total. It's, I mean, so I'm not a subject matter expert in this, but I don't believe in inventing the wheel either if it's already out there. So that I think that's going to be addressed.
I won't name any specific organization, but I can say I know of local organizations that have reached out to folks who are getting LTAC DMO funds, county, not us, saying, hey, you know, we're not listed on your website, we're not being advertised, and no response. So, or a negative response of, oh, we're not going to add you. So
This is Bremerton focused only, this DMO.
right. So yeah, just want to make sure that
Non-filtered.
whoever's doing this, there's some mechanism to make sure that if they're promoting tourism, they're promoting everything.
And that's going to hopefully be in the criteria that this entire council, so now it won't go from 3 to the entire council in the public process decide what are the criteria. And from my perspective, one would be, how is the DMO going to support all these other organizations since they're taking the lion's share of this money to do this for everyone?
Yeah.
And it won't be everybody.
And if we can get a complaint from an organization, right, that says, look, I didn't get my LTAC money, I can't do the marketing that we were doing before. I've, reached out, or I'm trying to get my venue promoted and it's not happening. What's the recourse for that organization? Since the city is funding the DMO, not that it has to be solved right now, but I just want to make sure we're thinking about that. Yeah. And I'm sure the contract can be written in a way of,
And it could be that that particular organization or event doesn't have the impact that's required.
And that could absolutely be,
Oh, yeah, please, yeah. So, because what I think what's great here is the DMOs being held accountable to a very specific contract, different than the contracts that we get for LTAC. So when they work with organizations, and so what I've seen, like the DMOs, I've worked with them on Bainbridge and some of the different ones in here, but they're going to say, okay, we're going to either sponsor your event, we're going to put you into this, but they're going to make those decisions to help drive the numbers that they're tracking to make the the goals in the contract. So, and I think in a way it's a better method than right now. Like, it's scary for organizations like of our size that LTAC, it helps a lot, but ideally if there's I'll just talk about us for a minute.
Sure,
if there's more people downtown, there's more, we have more chance of folks coming in the door and things like that. But it's a little bit of a leap of faith, and I think that having the DMO maybe make some of those decisions might be more informed, more educated, more expert at making the decisions about things. I'm trying to soften the conversation, but to make those decisions that sometimes the committee, because they have a lot going on here also, a lot of heart, can't see what I'm doing. So there's a lot of heart on those. I've done lodging taxes as well. There's a lot of heart and brain, but anyways, it's really hard to not give somebody money. So anyways.
No, I'm just, I think that's wise, but before, because also the museum doesn't do rack cards anymore distributing, but we used to, right? So like there's an example. Like let's say, is the DMO gonna print individual rack cards for people? Are they gonna do one holistic? I mean, it's gonna be tough, right? And I know one mechanism is that the council, let's do it, that the one council starts hearing complaints from organizations, and they're like, I'm not getting any response from the DMO. I don't support the renewal of a contract. I know we have that mechanism, but I'd rather not get there. Anyway, to think about. Other thing to think about is possibly a max amount, because if we're going to encourage someone to apply as a DMO and present a good case, I feel like they need a general scope of money. And two things I thought of was either saying like X% of LTAC funds will go towards the DMO, or set a solid number like 200,000 of the LTAC funds. And that
percentage of the
right.
Which is
Knowing it can variable. Yeah. So I'd almost say maybe there's a set amount is, X dollars to the DMO, and everything else will go towards the facilities.
One idea that's been used is to look at what we're already awarding the DMO, and that comes to about 120. Whatever figure we pick, I do of LTAC funds goes to direct marketing, or purportedly goes to direct marketing. That might include an event or two, who knows? But this would be only for direct marketing or destination marketing. So, and as far as rack cards, those rack cards would probably be Bremerton.
Right, come visit.
Right, and that
or
the History Museum or the Roxy would be part of that.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to say there'll be a setup next year.
I think, my opinion, I'd like to see what other cities and counties are doing as far as if they're establishing that, so I don't want to put that in the resolution. I think we're in agreement that we'll have to work that out when we iron out the details for the next few months.
Okay. If this passes, then we'll come back and set the actual harder criteria for 2027 LTAC. And I'll get there. Okay. All right, that helps. And then, oh yeah, I got a couple more. Sorry, I'm good. Unless, but I'm happy any on that. So the Pendergast facilities, reading the study report, I couldn't tell. Are we talking just improvements to the city facilities, or to adding extra, helping with hotel space nearby?
No, this is the regional soccer complex is an economic growth driver.
Okay. And again, we don't even have a pros plan yet.
Right.
So we don't know, but this is like a placeholder.
This is for capital improvement. I mean, we don't have funding for it.
Okay. And then the other thing in this study, I feel like one of the big things highlighted too was that POS visitor center. So talked about creating the DMO, but then there's a good section here on how a staff visitor center is a critical component for any city. And then I also have wayfinding, and then the alternative tourism venue, which is Pendergast. And so I'd like to see that visitors thing, center language added in or modified for the DMO.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But we can
feel
discuss
like
that criteria.
But not on the resolution. I think earlier when we were just discussing this, a virtual visitor center or somewhere, perhaps let's throw out at Quincy Square, a kiosk or something we were talking about. It doesn't have to be a brick and mortar where you've got a person there and say, oh, anybody that comes in, that may not be the most efficient use of the money.
Especially nowadays. I mean, I think that was important 20 years ago.
But again,
you'd be surprised.
Again,
I'm all for new technology, and I think that's where it really does come, Jeff, into looking at what other places are doing that have been successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you'd be surprised at the foot traffic need for a visitor center.
We're going to make mistakes, by the way.
That's right.
This is going to be revisited after their first awarding and say, oh, really, we need this. We're going to make mistakes, but we got to start.
At the ferry terminal, people go up to the people who are selling tickets for Kitsap Transit, and they ask them questions.
We used to have we used to have a staff, the chamber had a staffed little box down there.
Yeah, get all the ferries ready to go.
Yeah.
So the language in the study is open to multiple locations.
So would you guys like me to ask Kids Up Transit if they'd be interested in at least providing literature at that location?
Not yet. And that's also, that's something that the DMO would put into their marketing plan. Let's not do any work for them.
So I
Being idle.
don't want to vote for the resolution unless we have something in there about supporting visitor center too, because I think that's in the study. I think that needs to be added.
Where we
Couldn't that be part of the tourism and marketing plan?
I think it should be specific.
Getting too specific.
It seems like we picked out the resolution reflects one, and it reflects 2 of the 5 recommendations.
But that's a subset of the destination marketing organization.
It's a whole separate paragraph.
No, but what I'm saying is the DMO is also
The
going to cover
DMO
the
would
visitor
provide
center
that.
thing. So we have 2 primary things, the DMO and Pendergast.
Possibly, but the study actually talks about it, and it uses DBA and chamber agreements, but they say there's a strong opportunity to initiate use of more than one location if the DBA and chamber agree to coordinate and serve their visitor center.
So if you look at the San Juan County proposal, the DMO basically, if I recall correctly, subcontracts to chamber. And so that would be in their proposal of the DMO, however they want to do, if they want to do in-house or if they want to subcontract. So that leaves that open. I'm afraid if we put a C there that adds the visitor thing, we're restricting. I want the DMO to try to make the best decision based on the criteria that we set. And again, this should be at 10,000 feet. This shouldn't be down into details. But they should be able to come up with their proposal saying this is how we're going to do it, versus the council dictating we'll have a DMO and then we'll have a visitor center. I don't feel comfortable.
I would add in language 1 to at least. So I'm going to request, get my vote, is to add in language that mentions specifically visitor centers or centers, or you want to word it with kiosks.
I think that's above my pay grade. I don't want to get into dictating exactly how it needs to be.
The DMO will also be using this plan, this study, I'm sure, in the creation of its plan. If we want to put the criteria into the RFP, that operation of a visitor center has to be part of it, we can do that. But I don't think it needs to be part of the resolution itself. And I think we never know what's going to happen with what's going on. And I'll be very specific with the chamber, DBA, Visit Kitsap, Love Kitsap. Things are going up and down and all around all the time. So to try to craft something here, it was true when the study was published that there are 2 places as a visitor center. If that's true, when the RFP comes out, and it can be part of the RFP. You know, there's a little protectionism, I think, going on here.
I like keeping it simple. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
You know, the paragraph about the visitor center is followed by a paragraph with the same bold headline of improve and develop a plan for directional signage.
Right.
And we're not going to include that in the resolution. So I think keeping the resolution simple and then making our RFP more precise is the way to go.
Fair enough, but I disagree. And the wayfinding is covered by other city funding, and we just put it on the tip. So that's why I don't think it needs to be covered by LTAC. The last comment I had on this too is I worry. I mean, so I want to be clear. We're saying X amount of dollars for a DMO and every other single dollar in the Pendergast Park.
No, that's not what it's saying.
No,
That's not what it said.
No, there can be additional money, but this is the guiding framework for future LTACs. Saying, oh, the city council expects funding for a DMO. And look, if the city doesn't apply for Pendergast, well, then there's more money for the other organizations. And there may still be more money. There may be more money for the other organizations, even with the Pendergast
Well,
request.
then I
But
think what-
that's priority.
Let's add a 3. If Pendergast, as I read it right now, it's saying that there's 2 priorities. One is the DMO and the second Pendergast, and it's not clear that funds are allowed for anything else.
It says prioritize. So we
I would
don't
say
put the
3.
Admiral in there. We don't put other, I'm not gonna list other organizations.
No,
The
but-
LTAC can consider all kinds of things.
I would say 3 other facilities that operate,
But that's
other
not a
tourism
priority. So this doesn't put the DMO above Pendergast or the Pendergast above the DMO in the funding. It's just those 2. Those are their priorities of the council.
So I think, if I can,
Sure.
I think, because you're asking questions that I was about to ask.
Okay.
So I think what's being presented is the sort of higher level, document.
Mhm.
But then like Christine is gonna, like every year puts out this. So that'll be very clear who can apply. And for the most part, it sounds like all the same folks can apply. This is also gonna help let people know that it's gonna be more competitive. Maybe there's other limits. So there'll be this group of folks who can apply, and it sounds like they're gonna maybe have some additional screening. And then the committee that gets sat down with is gonna say like, hey, the priority, well, to be honest, priority 1 is gonna be kind of off the table, right? Because that's gonna be contracted to
The DMO.
DMO, right?
Yeah.
So the committee's not really gonna worry about 1.
Well,
They're gonna select the
select
DMO
it.
initially.
They're gonna select.
Okay. The
I'll
first-
be part of that process for recommendations and then bring the.
But it'll have
like any
only
committee.
applicants that meet all the criteria.
Yeah, and if we can separate that out, I think would be the best thing. So anyways.
Yeah, no,
Your
I
time.
appreciate it because and actually looking at the summary versus the resolution, I like how it has A and B instead of 1 and 2. I know it's silly, but when I
Sure.
saw 1 and 2, first of all, it seems like our number 1 priority is this, number 2 is
Yeah.
this. So even bullet points, I would say go do bullet points. But I think we need language in here that makes it clear because I think we're already seeing emails. My reading of this was my initial assumption was it was these 2. I want to avoid miscommunication. I want to make it clear that we're not saying, hey, LTAC committee, these are the 2 things that are funded. I want to make it clear that other organizations can apply via the state, statute.
Okay, but here's the problem with that, Jeff. If you put a C and you just say other organizations are eligible, you're saying the priorities are A, B, and C. And that's not
So
what we're
let's not
saying. The
add a
priorities
C.
are A and B.
Let's add another
I
sentence then that clarifies.
But what you're
These
hearing is,
priorities are not limited to, right? Although these are priorities, they are not, how about the right words, but they don't
They
exclude
don't
limit, right?
exclude other organizations from
Yeah,
applying.
but then I do worry, let's say the city comes in with a $500,000 ask for Pendergast.
Yeah,
DMO's
and
getting
it might.
200 and it eats up the whole thing. I
Uh-huh.
mean,
That's right.
yeah.
But realistically, if we have a professional destination management organization handling all the destination marketing for the city of in the city of Bremerton, I'm just gonna say it, Jeff.
Mhm.
Y'all don't need that big amount of money for marketing.
It's
Because
not for
gonna be
marketing.
They're allowed to.
It's
do
for
things
operation
like
of
Oh, yeah,
facility
capital
by
And
state
that's why-
statute.
That's why it says in local Bremerton-based tourism operations.
So this resolution is really about
I think this is
announcing a
fair.
paradigm shift in the way we're doing business compared to the past. And so I don't want to have that mixed message. You're right. If the DMO and then the city of Bremerton asks for all this money and there's no money left over, there may not be money left over for the others. I don't want to give that false sense of security that there could be. There may or may not be.
And I want to be clear that it says it's for tourism marketing plan promoting operations. It's not saying it's going to
No
operations. So
worries.
that money going to the DMO is not going towards any facilities. It's just the marketing component. And again, the RCW with LPAC is, yes, 1 marketing, but 2 supporting facilities. And so the Pendergast is absolutely, a facility.
We have two divergent belief systems here, okay? And I think we probably need to figure out, maybe we just need to take it to a conversation and this should be on general business.
Well, I think it needs to be on general business.
I- I'm
We may
not-
have people, that are from
Yeah.
organizations,
Yeah,
that's fine.
and I'm not voting for it in this current.
And that's
state unless
okay.
This is
So,
added language wise. I'm
last-
just putting that out there. Yeah.
Last council meeting, I didn't vote for something. I'm okay with it. Let's move on.
That's right.
It's
Not
okay.
every vote has to be unanimous.
No, but I'll get my vote. It's an extra it's just an extra sentence that can really clarify.
No worries. And respectfully, I
Yeah.
don't want to do that this time.
It's fine.
So I'm hearing what you're saying though, and I appreciate what you're saying. Because when you start giving priorities to people, to a group, then they forget that they have, let's not forget that these organizations have a right to apply. Just because we have a certain priority doesn't mean that they don't have a right to apply.
Right.
That's correct.
Like
Per
they-
RCW,
Yep.
Washington
correct.
State, which
Yep.
trumps any resolution that we have.
Understood.
And so, I guess I'm sympathetic to what you're asking for, which is to state that, maybe something in the resolution stating that the groups can still apply. I mean, does it need to be a third bullet point, or can it be an extra
It
sentence
can be an
saying?
extra sentence clarifying
I'm
these priorities,
totally-
are not to preclude.
I totally appreciate and understand that, and I wonder if there's a way that we can.
Why don't we
There's-
just call out the RCW and just say, and as per applicants.
And I also have,
RCW.
I do have heartburn. Literally, nothing gets funded but the DMO and Pendergast.
Well, they're
I
not
am
getting.
for-
I'm not saying
And
it
the two
is. This is up
contracts we have
to,
to-
this is up to the LTAC committee. I'm just saying, these are the emphasis. I'm sorry. I don't want to derail this. We've been working on this. It's been the goal for years, and everybody that's been the LTAC chair understands this frustration. I would hope that you have too, Jeff. I don't want to dilute this. This is a tough message that some organizations are not going to like. You're going to have to deal with it next Wednesday. I'm ready to do that. I'm going to deal with it. We're going to deal with it. This is a shift in the way we do things.
But we can soften the blow for people if we have the inclusion in the resolution for them. I don't think that it has to be we don't have to have people come to war. We can have a simple
People
sentence.
come to war anyway, or else we wouldn't have gotten a
Sure,
letter
but
from
we
Brian
can-
Johnson.
It's LTAC.
It's Chinatown.
I would
No.
support adding a sentence in if there was a wordsmith
It's
sentence.
my warning that, okay. Yeah, I think I've said my piece on it. I've given the warning.
Personally, I hate unanimous votes. I think when we have disagreements among council and different opinions out there, it's good. It's good for all of our constituents. It's good for us.
It's also good if we can come to a compromise together and have teamwork and find a way that we can meet the needs of everybody. That's also good.
Our city attorney, hopefully you've been listening to this conversation. Do you have a recommendation that would meet the needs of Councilmember Kaufman and Councilmember perhaps Chamberlain, along with the balance of the rest of the council, that wants to have emphasis on what's on there? So in other words, we don't want to dilute the direction of the city council for this resolution.
I don't think you guys are agree.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I don't have like magic words.
No.
To make it look
No,
like
and-
you're
and-
agreeing when you're really not. I can add a language, like Joe said, it's really easy, it's one sentence, but I think you were correct, that I think that it dilutes the message you're trying to.
Yes.
Because you both have different opinions.
Yeah.
So I cannot make it look like you have the same opinion.
I agree.
Adding that.
Attorney Fennell.
It's also the same tendency as feeling good that everybody that applied last year got funded. I'm sorry, it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, it is.
I am on the same page that
No.
way. I think there's a lot
So
of
if we can
organizations
come
that
to
shouldn't
consensus
have,
around
they're not
something, I'm
justified.
great with
Yeah.
Thank you. I agree. Hey, you know what? General business, let's take a break. Let's go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's your Michael.
I don't think, I think I've said a few things. Okay. So, first thing is, if we have a DMO who's doing better marketing, who's sponsoring some of the events and things like that that are happening, they could get better results than the individual siloed sort of things. So that could yield more hotel stays, which would yield more LTAC dollars,
Which
which
is what
would
is
put more
meant to
into
be.
the pot to take from. So I just wanted to say that one thing.
Yeah.
about the language in this thing. What if it just said, when the committee considers distributions or allocations or whatever, use these priorities, like just a little bit of language that doesn't say the priorities are, but use these criteria, that's a new word, it's a prioritized criteria together, see, okay. I'm just thinking there's maybe a way to kind of just say like, it can easily read black and white, two priorities, that's it. So I think we can just say that. Now, that being said, if they came back to us and we had a big Pendergast thing and they said no money for it, that could be an issue and that could get sent back. Okay. The other thing I want to say is, in general, I support this. I support the shift. It's a working smarter, not harder kind of thing. I don't like the thought of not being able to apply for, or maybe not having as good a chance, maybe of some funding, but that's a different thing. The other thing I wanted to say is that I don't think that the DMO should be in the regular LTAC cycle. Because let's just say that organization A and organization B both apply to BDMO. And organization A gets it. Organization B might be doing other things that, maybe it's an organization that wants to be a DMO and also does a festival. So rather than put it together, it just seems clunky. It seems like we should decide who the DMO is, let the dust settle, then you can do applications.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out.
That's a
No
good
worries,
idea.
and budgets, right? I mean,
That's a
we need
good,
this done in time for organizations to plan their next year's budgets, right?
So again, this is why we say 2027 funding.
Yeah.
You can work out all
Yeah.
the details
but
and
that's a good
within
one.
the parameters of the LTAC,
Yeah,
RCDET.
and we'll still get last minute. I mean, Brian hadn't even seen that report for that study. So
It's a year old.
I know, we'll still get last minute letters. Cause it's LTAC.
Well, it's
Okay, general break.
general business.
All right, break.
Show up again.
General break, is that the
General break.
We'll come back at 7:30.
Okay.
Okay, folks, we're back in session. A little housekeeping here. So I don't want to shortchange this next topic. So with the council's permission, if this takes an hour, that's fine with me. It's time well spent. But then I'm going to ask that we, fortunately, some of the people aren't here, that the updates for council goals be pushed to next study session, okay? Because I would like to end the study session, wrap it up by 8:30 and go to the executive session at 8:30, and then hopefully be out here by 8:45. I just see the council goals just going on. So, okay, with that, we're going to turn to our council vice president, Jane Rowlowski, to have a continued council discussion on the multifamily tax exemption program, with the understanding that this is not going on an agenda bill item next week. So this is just more discussion. Jane, you got the floor.
Thank you. Christine is going to help me with slides. I think there might have been a couple changes in the packet, so these are all clean slides now. So we start off with the history of the MFTE program, and then we want to review the MFT program performance, discussion of proposed modifications, and then the next steps that we want to do. So this has been up for council discussion numerous times. Revisions were considered in 2017, 18, and 22. And very few of the revisions were accepted by council. So one of the first ones was eliminating the 8-year tax exemption. And that is the exemption that has no focus on affordability at all. And then the next one that was considered was removing the moderate income allowance for the 12-year exemption. And it was just have a low income option, and that was not adopted. There was other changes to focus on low income households. One of the biggest ones was to consider the difference between what we understood to be the county AMI and change it to the city of Bremerton AMI. And they, council did adopt in 2021, effective 2022, which allowed for the exemption to add a 20-year option. So like an example is somebody who is on an 8-year exemption is now currently allowed to get a 12-year exemption if some of the units are considered moderate and low income. Okay. The next slide. Okay, so the 12-year exemption requires at least 20% of the units are rented or sold as affordable housing. And that, I was unaware that that was an option that the state allowed, was to sell 20% of the units to affordable. And then there's criteria that how long it has to stay at that affordable rate. Like somebody couldn't go buy it at a lower income and then turn around and sell it and get all the equity a couple of years later. It has to stay in place for 99 years. It has to, if it's rented as affordable housing. Currently, we have
Those are
these
minimums.
Yes. So these are our listed designated residential target areas for MFTE. But there is the state does allow for as few as 4 units to be considered, which that may induce people to do some infill, some of our more established neighborhoods, and something that could be more manageable for a very small developer to do, or somebody has an oversized lot. They might want to add 4 ADUs And that would be allowable under this. Under, if we take that option. The state has lots of options that we haven't considered. So as of May of 25, these are the current, this page, and then there's another page of units that are either getting it or have applied for it. Some of them are still in the application period. Their building permits are under review. They have conditional, but those conditionals do expire. So we have to consider that. So right now we have 4 units getting 12-year, but I'm not sure about this, Anne. When Spyglass now has an additional 12 years, is that included in that 4? It is.
Oh, and they're not units, they're developments, they're projects, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Those are developments.
Yeah.
Does that then become a 20? If they extend from the 8 to, and add on 12, does that become a 20 and it has the 99-year requirement?
No, because they're just renting.
Okay.
No.
Well, but that 99-year is for rentals too, right? If they have a 20-year
Yeah, if I get the 20-year.
at the initial.
At the
Okay.
initial.
Okay.
So
Can't upgrade later. So,
You can extend like Spyglass from the 8
Right.
and then add 12, but that doesn't mean you're a 20 with the 99 year.
designation.
Yeah.
Can you then do a 20? Under the current rules, can you then do a 20-year or go from an 8 to a 20-year?
no.
Okay,
You have to choose 20 at the onset.
you can do 8, 8 and 12.
And we have that in our code. We have the 20.
Oh, yeah. We have 8 and 12.
Well, that's 20.
And 20.
And you have
and
22.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
20.
the 20-year
So-
designation,
So if you start with the 20,
you stay with the 20. I'm just thinking about, like, this is funny, some people don't like my gym membership, right? Like, you can upgrade and downgrade anytime you want, but,
you lose the pricing.
And the
I did
thing
lose
with the
price.
99-year covenant is it makes it much harder to sell than to another owner.
So Jane, do you want discussion now or do you want to go through your
I
presentation?
think we can,
Sorry.
I think it's easier for everybody just to talk through and get
Thank
Okay,
clear.
so I do have an observation.
Sure.
You have 8 and you have 12, you don't have a 20. I think it's obvious. The 20 is too onerous and no developer is gonna do a 20. This is just a layman with just like, there's not gonna happen. If I want to do a 20, I'm gonna do with what one developer apparently has just recently done. I'm gonna do an 8, and then after my 8 is up, smart thing, I'm gonna go do a 12.
Right.
20% of my units gotta be low income, but I'm using the Kitsap AMI and I'm looking at the delta between how much rent I'm losing and how much property tax I'm saving. And in their case, I would assume they said, the delta is in my favor.
Yes.
Go this way, so they
Yeah.
did that. The 20 is an option, but it's not realistic. I don't know.
Right.
I wonder if any organization in the state or any organization in Washington State has done it. That'd be interesting.
So one thing too, I've heard many discussions about the AMI. Well, that's not the unit of measure they're using, because the AMI for this Bremerton, Seattle, Bremerton, Silverdale, Bainbridge, HUD is using a number of $124,000, where the AMI for that area, when you look at the census data, is approximately 100,000.
I have
So
a
they use-
question about that, because I was thinking about as you can imagine, I've been thinking about this
Yeah.
a lot. Census, is that self-reported, that income? Because census is self-report, right? When they take census, I tell them how many people are living in my household, and I tell them my household income.
Well, how do you think HUD gets
HUD,
that
you have to
number?
verify it. HUD is, you
Well,
bring paycheck stubs in.
When I filled out my,
back, there you go.
when I filled out my census, it said that was
It's
By
self-reported.
law. Yeah, but you're breaking the law if you lie about it.
Let's,
You know what I'm
I mean,
saying?
yeah, but do we
it's
believe?
verifiable with HUD and not verifiable by census data. Census data is self-reported anecdotal, which anecdotal is still
Well,
data.
who
but it's not
knows?
supposed to apply.
Yes, yes. I just wanted clarification on it. Might not even be that big of a deal.
HUD's AMI for Silverdale Bremerton has increased by over 32% in the past 5 years.
Mhm.
So in 2021, when it first, and that's for 4 people, okay,
Thank you, I was gonna ask that.
4-person household.
Okay.
Okay, so that's increased quite a bit, quite rapidly. Have the next slide.
We
Christine.
really should look at that though. Again, this is paradigm shift. I'm just going to offer a paradigm shift. That's a good thing. That means that people overall are making more money.
Doesn't mean people in Bremerton are.
Doesn't
making
mean
money.
people in
No,
Bremerton are.
but, well, except they might be. We can't, you know what I'm saying? Let's,
It also doesn't mean they're not.
that's
Yeah.
right.
So.
There's
That's
no
right.
data point.
We'd want to
that's
compare it
not-
to the state and national averages too, and account for
Yeah.
inflation and trends, yeah.
Yeah.
3 years ago, 40% of Bremerton households were earning less than $40,000. So there's some non-anecdotal data for you. Yeah. We have a very high percentage of disabled people, of seniors,
Folks who are receiving resources in general, who are
I think
income
we're
qualified for
really aware of
resources.
them.
there you
I
go,
think
that's much
we're-
better language.
I think this council has been very aware of.
We're not saying that, we're just saying like the data point that we should be crafting, the FTE should be more refined for Bremerton. I think that's. Jane's
Definitely.
point, Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
And
I can't even figure out, there's a map in this packet. Okay, so HUD has a map of their MSA, their metropolitan statistical area. It does include Bainbridge Island. It includes Bremerton, it includes Port Orchard. But there's portions of the county it doesn't include, so I don't know why they do that. So, okay.
Is it unincorporated? Is it county?
Yeah, there's parts of the county
That are included in the map?
Yeah, but not all of them. Okay.
We really need an answer on that. We need to come to some consensus about what type of figure we're gonna use.
I think I understand why it's HUD called that MSA. I mean, I was former federal employee. That stands for Metropolitan Statistical Area. And so they're considering Bremerton, Silverdale, Bainbridge metropolitan. If you're out in Seebeck, that's not metropolitan, that's rural by definition. I mean, that's just the layman.
Okay.
That's what the MSA is.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? So this is how they adjust. So if they're starting with 124,000. So for one person, they're saying you do 0.7%, which means their AMI estimate is 87,000. Right? 3 people, 0.9, so they're saying that family income is 111,000. 4 people, 124,000. So that is how they adjust for their AMI. So they're saying that the AMI for the whole metropolitan area is $87,000.
Jane, are you saying that right now, if I put in my application, throwing like that, this is a spyglass for that low income one, all I have to do is make less than, if I was single, all I have to do is make less than 87,100 and I could qualify for that unit?
Cool.
No, that's just a question. Because we're
Because
using.
it's a percentage of the AMI.
It's a percentage of that AMI.
No, it's.
So there's a chart.
Oh, okay. So
Percentage
this
of
is the adjustment.
This is 100% of AMI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then there's a percentage that's
Yeah,
applied on that.
Percentage of that.
Yeah.
that's-
Oh,
And that's something else we could adjust that we found out that,
Yep,
and
We can
Just-
adjust almost everything.
anecdotally, I
Okay, here we
believe I heard that, the owner of Spyglass would be receptive to changing, to adding a Bremerton adjusted AMI to their criteria.
well, that'd be awesome,
Yeah.
because I asked the city attorney if we could modify that, and she said contract's already been
Yeah.
signed, if I understood it correctly. So if they did, that would be wonderful, but by law, they don't.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So if you're one person, 60% of the AMI to get into Spyglass, you'd have to make $52,000 or less, right?
Or less,
Or no.
Or less,
or more.
or less,
less.
to be income qualified.
If it's 60%.
If it's 60%,
Isn't that the threshold you have to hit?
No,
Where are
you have
we
to be
now?
more than 52 a year.
Okay.
60%? Okay.
So would they take somebody who was making 26 grand a year?
They absolutely could.
Mhm.
And and they would feel sure that person would pay the rent?
I don't know.
Okay.
So here's my
But they can-
question, because I thought if your income was lower, then your rents are lower. It's also a percentage of what your gross income is. Am I not correct?
Isn't
So
that,
in that example, if your income was $52,000, you'd pay whatever percentage of that up to for your rent versus if your income was 26,000.
That's
In other
only
words-
with vouchers.
No, yeah.
Okay, so that's not
With
true.
Vouchers.
Yeah.
That's actually.
We're just using HUD. It's
Okay,
not
that's
really
fine.
a
So their
funded
rent is,
program.
if the income qualified unit is 1,500, it doesn't matter if you make 52,000 or 26,000.
It's
Right,
like, it's
Okay.
the developer or the management organization is subsidizing that. They're eating that. Okay,
Right.
so instead of them, like VHA and others, when they have vouchers, they get money from HUD for the
Right,
difference.
Right.
This
Gotcha.
is the developer or the management organization
Yeah,
subsidizing.
it's the delta between the market
Yeah.
rate and whatever this.
Yeah. Is that correct, Andrea?
I just want to clarify that this is perhaps a desire table and not what the code requires. The code allows up to 115% down. So this seems like it's a chart about where you might be desiring to go, but the code allows 115% of that 124.
So when I ask where we are, we're at 115.
No, sorry.
That's for the 10% moderate,
That'd be
right?
next low moderate,
Right,
but that's 80 to 115.
the moderate.
Okay,
Moderate is 80 to 115, low income below 80.
right.
And this was really.
And I heard that Tacoma or Spokane that was on the call, they found their sweet spot at 70.
But
They
they
were
also
saying
have
that.
a lower AMI than we
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
which is amazing. Looking at this chart I sent out, there's only 2 counties that have a higher AMI than Kitsap in the whole state.
it's higher than Manhattan.
Yeah.
I'd really like to find that sweet spot where we can, where developers or, you know, agents can say, yeah, we can make that work. We can make a 60% or a 70% work. Whatever that, I would like to get like consensus so that everybody's committed to this, everybody's on the same team. I think the rub's gonna come with what impact that'll have on applications. However, I think that's the direction I'm hearing that we want to go. I just don't want to get it so low that of a requirement that we end up not getting any.
So that builds on my question I have. Let's say market rate is $2,000. What is the low income rate then? I think it's based on what the applicant says their income.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That was my whole
Yeah,
question.
they will pay that,
Right.
but the owner will not get the rest of it from HUD like
Correct.
they usually
No, I
do.
understood that.
Yes.
And so there is a
It'll be a
difference between
third of-
an applicant with higher income versus an applicant with lower income, because the landlord is gonna get less rent
Yes,
for the low income
yes.
person.
Yep.
Okay.
So most likely they're gonna pick. If I was a,
So it is the
if
same.
I was a
Section 8.
capitalist, I would say, if I have to go with 80% AMI, and I had two applicants, one who's stating their income is $69,699 versus another applicant who had the same good references that made 50,000, who are you gonna pick?
Well, but those set asides are where we have some control. So that my understanding is, so that those 10, 20%, whatever it is, we can specify, you have to provide this amount of housing for those meeting these income criteria. And that's where we can lower it from what, 115 or whatever. I think we have some.
But what I'm saying is, right now, in HUD, they're saying 80% AMI is 69.70, right? But the way our program is set up, where it's 115%, that means somebody making $130,000 would qualify for that 80% of AMI, right? Is that what we're looking for? Is that what our community is looking for?
Well, and remember this, I think this is a really good time for me to just make a point. Okay, in our goals, this city, this council, staff, everybody does not have an economic development lens. We have no staff dedicated to it. We don't look at our tourism that way. This MFTE is not simply an affordable housing strategy. It's to make sure we have enough affordability and availability for all income strata. So we have a lot of young, working class professional people that need housing. They can't afford a single family house. They want an apartment or multifamily housing. Those are probably going to be the ones that are in the 115 or, whatever. They still deserve housing.
So then why even bother having a 12-year? Just say 8-year, no affordability
So it's
requirements.
I should just kind of focus on facts for now.
Yeah.
And then, but back to Eric's comment, I'm doing some quick searching, and I think the rent is tied not to each individual tenant's income, but to 30% of what the qualifying is at. I think it's, so if it's right now set to 80% AMI, it's then 30% of that 80%, so it'd be 30% of that number monthly.
So it's 30%, the rent would be 30% of this would be about
Divided by 12.
$2,100 versus 30% of this, which would be about $1,500.
Yeah. And so the rent would be the same for every tenant, regardless of each tenant's individual.
Regardless if this tenant makes,
Right, 24,000.
their rent would be $1,500.
Yeah.
So we're all consistent on the same
that
page, understanding.
accurate?
Oh.
It's a third of the AMI, not a third of the
Everybody's-
income.
It's like
Rent
tax
is-
brackets. It's like IRS tax
But
brackets.
it's just like a sliding scale.
Let's say market rate is,
Yeah.
let's say market rate is 2,500. And then you do the formula, so that means the max that the building owner could charge is, let's just say 1,800 or something, whatever the 30% of the 80% comes out to be. Is that right? I just wanna make sure, is that right?
So it's 115, these numbers are much lower than what, the way our ordinance reads right now.
Right.
So here your goal is to adopt census and to reduce the AMI to what DCD presented back in 22.
I don't know if there's a goal. I think it's an information.
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to get facts on that, yeah.
I do remember that presentation. And if we're over 100% now, even going down to the AMI, not the census, would be a big step in the right direction.
It would be a big step, but I mean, what is our goal for giving developers an extra 4 years of no taxes? Is our goal just to get them to build? Or is it to get them to build and give at least a small percentage of Bremerton families?
Can I,
want both.
I want to harken back to what Denise brought up at the very beginning, which is that HUD is verifiable, and census is not. I want to make sure that we do have an accurate data point. But what I remember from the conversation about HUD was that it has to include it. Is it called an MSA or is it called?
It's supposed to include their utilities too, that 30%, not just rent.
Which census would not capture that.
And neither would using this formula.
And this is HUD AMI? So I'm missing the part about, I'm specifically, that the utilities, whatever, has nothing to do with the fact that we need a data point that is fact-based and verified. And
Could I for a second?
yeah, you know what I'm asking about the HUD
I
combining.
think it's the fact, what is important about this table is to show that you've got an AMI, which is the most reliable data source for us to use.
Yeah.
The census data is a good comparison point to see where are we hitting on this spectrum of the AMI. And what she's showing in the slide is that basically Bremerton salaries are 17% lower than the AMI.
Okay.
So right now, the code is established for 115% of AMI and lower. So I think the question before you is, how do you correct for the Bremerton factor, which is what we talked about, to pick the right range of numbers? I think this debating about what the rents actually are, I think what's important on the slide is to give the observation that in reality, Bremerton salaries are much lower by a factor of 17%. So perhaps if you want to do an adjustment, that's where you start, you look at that 17% difference, and then you start looking at the AMI numbers and choosing maybe a different range. That's what's important to you as a group to move forward. And so I think this debate about if 30% of this, I think the question for you now is to look at the incomes, just to make this conversation go a little bit easier, just to wrap your head around what is it that you'd like to pick to work from.
Well, but it seems like then that what you're suggesting is that we go with the census data.
You really need to go with the census data because you need to go with the AMI data because it's published and updated. It's a reliable data source. You've got to use the MSA. And then what part of the MSA, what percentage you use, that's what's important.
And is that what we get from the census data?
The census data is
a data point
of the demographics of Bremerton itself.
Okay.
It might be to take the tables to measure and evaluate an application. We need to use the MSA data. What range of the MSA data we use, that's what's up to you. And what she's showing here is that census tells us we're at least 17% lower than what the MSA shows.
So at the very least, we want to lower it 17%. At the very least.
That's what you want
But,
to
right?
consider.
Okay.
But
That's just a starting point.
Right, but I think the easier thing to consider is the percentage of AMI, because are we gonna come back and change this? Like, what if next year the data points show that we're 19% below, or that we're only 13% below?
We should look at it sporadically. I mean,
We're supposed to.
Is it every year?
We're supposed to look at it every 2 years, council.
Okay.
For the law.
And so we had a 2022 presentation and was there, and I'm sorry, I don't remember. It was a little bit of a blur.
It's after I remember a little bit.
And we agreed on some things and didn't agree on others. I was on finance
Committee at the time. And I think
we made a recommendation that wasn't taken up by the rest of council. And that, am I wrong in remembering this?
They added the 20%.
No, that's correct.
2022.
2022. What were the changes that came, because there was a good
Well,
recommendation from
There
staff.
was a slide. There's a
Correct.
slide there.
My recollection is there was recommendations, we gave feedback, and then it didn't come back until
council itself had to bring it back up. And then we passed,
Yes.
I remember passing the 20-year. And then there was one other item I felt like in my.
There
head
was,
made
it was, there
easier
was
for staff.
specifically,
Yeah.
Garrett had brought us the presentation that,
Mhm.
I mean, talking about the
Bremerton factor.
the salary, the Bremerton
back to
factor,
this
the salary.
Anna's right.
I'm sorry.
Anna's right.
You're pointing, what's going on?
Yeah, we can give you the PowerPoint presentation that was done last time. And
Yeah.
we delivered all the products that the council wanted. There was certain data that we do not have expertise to produce, so it was not produced. So the notion that we didn't bring back something, we did everything within our ability.
Oh,
to do so.
I don't know that, I don't know.
I don't
that
think that's what she's saying. I think she's saying that there were certain things that finance committee
We're supposed to look at.
or told reported back to council that this was.
And then we
finance
just,
committee's
we just kept pushing it off and pushing it off. We never really brought it back up in council.
But council accepted some of the recommendations, right?
Right.
Yeah, if you could send us that slide, that'd be great. And then we
So,
could go back to
I-
this
But I
presentation.
think we have, I think we would have consensus over lowering our current level as a first step of 17%. I mean, that's data qualified and it's a step in the right direction. So do we have consensus and then we can
I feel
go
like we're
deeper?
jumping the gun here. Let's try and understand all the facts in the table. I feel like we still don't have consensus on what the actual facts are.
Yeah, we need more of the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually feeling more confused now.
Now.
Yeah, it
than we
was.
were before.
Yeah, I'm not gonna ask this, but I'm just gonna say that I almost feel like I'm getting confused over now who qualifies and if they're at what level. How does that play? I would almost like to hear like how a person qualifies, gets it, and then go through that to see how that feels for like equity of a person seeking, and then use that to help me decide how we should set limits or whether we should allow it or not. Does that kind of, I feel like we're all over, and I think that's kind of what happened before is this.
Exactly.
There's all these
Agreed.
percentages and these acronyms and like.
And it just went over our.
And we could almost just slow down and almost just say like, okay, we agree that this is the thing and then this is the next piece.
How about if we take the current ordinance reads and do it on what HUD's adjustment factors are and give you a precise chart of how much rent people would have to pay based on how much their income was and if they qualify.
And I think you and I've talked about this, but like, if like, I'm gonna make up magic numbers here, but if we found out that, Bremerton residents in these affordable units are benefiting $1 million a year, but the developers are benefiting $3 million a year. Like, is that worth it or not? I mean, there's a long-term thing for the housing, but we have to weigh what seems fair.
Another
To
point
everybody.
that, though, another point to that is that when developers build multifamily housing that are rentals, they don't see profit on that.
Right.
It's not like developers of single family homes that are sold. They see profit from rent, okay, over a period of time. So initial investors do not get their money, except over the course. So it's always important to remember that.
But also, then the piece I was saying is that as a city, increasing the housing stock, it also has a long range return. So even though we may have given up eight years of revenue off that spot.
Yes.
We've got I don't know what the life expectancy is.
Actually,
30 years
they're now
or whatever.
75 years. I was
So
corrected.
So
Yeah.
anyways, you get I'm sorry. I just wanted to just say that I'm more confused, but.
I think the rest of Jane's, this tax impact, because what you said was what I was thinking all along being on council is that, okay, the city is foregoing the tax money. But the truth of the matter is, go ahead, Jane, explain the
The truth of the
slide.
matter is it's getting shifted to all the other taxpayers. And that group of taxpayers is getting smaller and smaller. So right now, the average house in Bremerton is taxed based on a value of right around $350. $350,000, right? So that means that each household is paying an extra $80 in Bremerton. And they're paying it in other parts of the county too. It's not clear to me if everybody in the county pays, but others for this. So like if Port Orchard starts up their MFT program again, we'll be paying higher taxes to cover their MFTE. And we're paying more, obviously, in Bremerton. So, I mean, in my opinion, it's great to get new housing, but somebody's got to pay for police and fire that all these new buildings aren't paying for.
I understand that, and yet, one thing that I'm working with Ann on tallying, there's millions and millions and millions of dollars of housing in Bremerton that are owned by nonprofits. They pay, they don't pay taxes.
Neither do
on that.
churches.
Okay.
Well, the school district.
So I think that's really important for us as a council to understand, especially when we get challenged on how little we're doing on providing affordable housing. Wait a minute, we're already investing these in missed taxes on all these properties. So that's another figure to bring into this that I hope to have soon.
But also you need to think about.
They don't even report it to the county.
Those properties also are getting much, much lower rents that aren't being reimbursed at all, right? So if you're living in one of Agape's apartments that they rent out to people, if they're renting somebody.
Oh, yeah, they're getting much less.
Yeah, much less.
Yeah,
So much
and
less
yet
than any market.
The services are still required.
Right.
Yeah.
I have just a question. Fact, I mean, there can't be any occupancy on these units they can't have any openings, do they? I'm curious what the vacancy rate of the units that qualify for the.
Well, there's very few of them.
I know.
There's less than 80.
Right. So
I'm guessing they're pretty well occupied.
You're guessing, but you don't know, right?
I don't know.
We got about 4 more slides. We got 20 minutes left.
Okay.
Okay.
We could talk about this for days.
Next slide, please.
Let's not.
So this is the chart showing what average rents are. So we compared Bremerton and Bainbridge and Port Orchard and Polesville. So we're the light blue.
We're at the bottom.
For,
teal.
This is for, one.
Yeah, there was a big
So
drop.
Jeff
in rents
is colorblind.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I'm
It would
sorry.
be,
Yeah, we're good.
this is
No,
very
that's actually
similar
pretty
in
decent.
tone.
Yeah.
So it's this
Yeah,
right
thank
here.
That's us in Port Orchard,
Yes.
intertwined,
Yeah.
like loving snakes.
Something, I have a quick anecdote. I was talking with somebody else about MFP in Bainbridge Island, and their AMI actually benefits Suquamish tribal members. They're the Suquamish, because the AMI is so much higher that folks are making much lower across the bridge that it benefits them. It doesn't necessarily, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily do that for us.
Yeah, but number one, they don't have the 8-year in Bainbridge Island.
Okay, they only have 12-year.
Uh-huh.
Well,
They have the 12 and the 20.
How's this, this calculated? Is it average of all the housing units? Is it average for a 1-bedroom apartment?
Rental market. Rent. It's rental
Right,
market.
rent of what?
Market rate and affordable are included.
but you're
Rent of
asking
what?
1-bedroom, 2-bedroom,
Right.
3-bedroom, 2-bath
Yeah,
with a dishwasher and a backyard.
if you compare 2 cities and one city has
With
a ton of
mature
1-bedroom
landscaping.
apartments and the other one has a ton of 3-bedroom apartments, you're gonna get different average rental rates, so.
Yeah.
I just wanna
This
make
is
sure we're
just
apples to
A
apples.
small snapshot. Okay, next slide, please.
So I get,
Thank you, Jeff.
So currently the
Okay.
sunsets in 2031, but in reality it sunsets in 2051 if we grant a 20-year in 2031. But the state legislature, it seems like they go and modify it almost every year. So they could modify this so it goes to the end of time.
Well, in the
Currently.
the state legislature seems very supportive of the MFTE programs.
Well, Department of Commerce is very supportive of it. Yes.
Well, the legislature did some very, like, they're requiring MFTEs in many areas.
They see it as a tool.
99-year leases, automatic renewal.
Yeah.
So these are possible program modifications. We could remove the 8-year. We could revisit the criteria of existing for the additional 12-year.
To extend them?
To whether or not we
The
want to be able to
criteria.
do that, if we want to, if we still want somebody to do an 8 and then get 12 years afterwards. Understand the impact of shifting to low income only on affordability and growth. Consider the best approach for defining low income, study the overall tax impact as compared to the public benefit, and decide the approach to gather input from the community. I have it on one of my next district meetings. And I think it's something that everybody who has a district meeting should have a conversation with their constituents to find out how all of them feel. Yes.
But I'd just like to add, oh, I'm sorry. I hadn't realized you weren't done.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, what did you, just another thing we learned at the webinar was that many cities that participated, they don't automatically renew MFTEs. They recommend to council.
One jurisdiction said that. I think it was Spokane.
Okay. Nonetheless, it's something that can happen.
And they're pretty involved in MFTE.
They are, and affordable housing, very involved in making.
I would rather set the criteria so that then it doesn't have to come to council every time.
There's a reason why we have a hearing examiner and that stuff for the council. You don't want to bring politics into this. Oh my
Well,
goodness.
it's also true that in many jurisdictions, like Hallsville, for instance, the administrative hearing examiner makes recommendation to council. Their word is not final.
Sure.
It,
Understood.
So everybody does it.
yeah. Welcome diversity.
Are we any further than when we started?
Yes.
I'm saying what I still think is not clear in my mind. Two things. It's actually still not clear on how the rent is set. And I'm getting different answers as I Google. And so I'm looking at here's Andrew back there. Do you have clarity on if the rent is per person's income? Is it fixed for a building? And how is it different between the low and moderate?
Based on the AMI. So if the AMI is 115, and affordable housing is 30% of your income for rent and utilities. So you would expect to see that the rent would be a little bit less than whatever 30% of whatever 115.
Of the person's income
No,
of the AMI.
The AMI for
Of
the
the
area.
AMI.
So like, I guess if I had a building with a bunch of 1-bedroom apartments and that all those apartments qualified, the rents in theory would be, if they were all rented on the same day, it would all be the
They have to
same.
range from 60 to 115 because you have to have a mix of low and the moderate income.
Right.
So it's going to be that range of from 60 to 115, or it could be less than 60.
But there's a minimum that they're all gonna hold. They're not gonna be like, oh, we're gonna do more units for this affordable price. We're so generous, we're gonna add 5 more units on. There's
That's a
minimum, but there's-
reminder, this is brand new housing. That's something that I've been thinking about as I've been thinking about this over and over and over again. And that is, I qualify for this, folks. I mean, I'm at a
Me too, let's
situation.
apply.
I do too.
We qualify,
Me
right?
too.
I don't,
I got the first
almost
step.
like we're projecting an expectation that I deserve, to live in Spyglass, at a certain income level. And I think, market rate, brand new market rate housing, to put an affordability clause in there, I think is a big deal. I think it's great.
I think 20 years of not having to pay taxes is a big deal.
The
Also,
20 years required, well, unless it's
No,
an
they-
8 or 12 year
they
exemption.
have an 8 and a 12.
If we got
That's
you
20
rid
years.
of the age, then, we wouldn't have that problem.
Right.
And that's one thing that's on.
We
the-
already
For next-
talked about the back of the envelope.
Right, so for next time, I feel like an example of the rents would be very illustrative, like even if the real building or a fake building. You'd be like, these are the kind of market level rents, these are the moderate, these are the low. I just feel like it'd be helpful. And then the tax shift, and I'm looking here at the Department of Commerce has a 2-page sheet on tax shift, and I've read this before, I'm reading it again, and it's still like, it's very complicated. And it totally depends on your local jurisdiction. And like, I'm sorry, I didn't say major kudos out loud for gathering all this.
Oh, for sure.
Well, we get the
But I-
information from
yeah.
how our local auditor does do it, and that's what was in here.
So is it, I mean, on one hand, I can look at it and say, okay, we're still getting the same level of tax revenue if MFT is enacted, but folks in the county are paying more. So we're essentially getting county residents to help subsidize our city thing, which is.
Yes.
Kind of cool.
And we're-
That's why the county is looking at
Representing
MFT, so they
Bremerton
can get it
residents
from.
solely, I mean.
And the
We are
county
also subsidized.
Per the new state law, the county cannot do 8 years.
But let me ask you, okay, so based on,
I don't know.
if I can build off what Jeff just said, then we're not as a city, we're not giving up a penny of revenue because of this program. What we basically said is, we're gonna come together as a community, and every citizen, every homeowner is gonna throw $80 in a pot. We're gonna get new housing built, and we're gonna give people affordable rates. I mean, you know,
And we're gonna do
That's
that for the
public
next
benefit.
20 years.
because we keep saying that we're not getting money to pay the police department, but you're telling me we are getting money to pay the police department, and I'm chipping in $80, and I'm willing to do that, and you're chipping in $80, but you might be unhappy about it. But it's this greater good
I like
kind of thing
people.
And I might live in the
But the
county,
thing is-
chipping in to have affordable.
in the
The thing is,
community,
we're only
and keep
supposed
those
to
people
be-
out of your community.
By law, we're only supposed to raise property tax 1% a year,
Mhm.
correct?
Right.
Well, by using this MFTE, we are raising everybody's property tax more than 1% every year. And it's gonna get,
We're not doing it. That's the county assessor. Call them in.
Well, and I don't
The program
understand, it
is.
certainly isn't broken down in the assessor's bills.
well, no, they're not gonna break it down, but she
Some
broke
kind
it
of
down,
hidden.
she broke it down for us and by
I
giving
still
us.
don't
the
understand, it's not clear. to me.
$80 on the one,
Doesn't make sense to me.
based on a 386, whatever that was, is not,
Oh, I got it in my packet, right?
it's not gonna raise it by much.
I would really love to revisit the 2022 proposal from DCD.
We have
I,
a separate like lunch meeting on this to go through.
I think there's a little rule about that.
you're not doing that.
You can know like Tuesday.
So building on what Jeff pointed out just a few minutes ago, for me to make an informed decision, I don't know if it's proprietary, but I would like to just pick out one housing example that has a 12-year program. Find out, tally up all the market rate rents, and then their rents that are less than market rate. See what that delta is, and then see what their savings is on the property tax. And I'd just like to see, is that number a 3 to 1? Is that a 2 to 1? Is that a 1 to 1? And then from there, I would look at, do I want to tweak my formula on the AMI thing to make it more closer to a 1 to 1 ratio if it is a 3 to 1 or a 4 to 1, to make it fair. That's only if I want to keep this thing. As a taxpayer, I'm finding out that I'm paying whatever it is, $160 a year on my home, whatever it is, to subsidize this, and I'm only getting 68 quote unquote on affordable houses. And we found out it's 115% of AMI, so it's not really for really low income people. That's 5.6% of the total units. No, I understand. So, but But I also counterbalance that with my opinion, the legislative intent of this was not primary for affordable housing.
right.
It was to provide
Middle
for increasing housing, not the middle, missing middle, increasing housing in areas that need redevelopment. And that has happened in downtown Bremerton. And I'm convinced that we wouldn't have all this progress that we have here if we didn't have MFTE. So be careful. And when you look at the number of projects, initially, that was true. Almost all the developers, well, I'd say 70% of the developers picked the 8-year versus the 12. You start messing with this 12-year formula and you keep the 8, they're all going to shift to the 8. That's going to tell you that right now. If you lower the rents, they're going to go to the 8. So do you want to get rid of the 8, just have the 12? And are you certain that anybody will take the 12? We already know anecdotally, no one's taking the 20. No one's going to take the 20.
Right.
Right? But will they still take the 12? And that's where we need to have a back of the envelope analysis on one apartment building and tell me what that delta is, so I can make an informed decision on whether I can tweak this and they can still. Pencil it out.
More than one, everyone possible, because I did this.
Okay, everyone possible then.
2022, I did my stab at doing that for the 606, but I know the 606 is also special because it's a garage. And so, yeah, for anyone listening in this room or online, there's the more data, the better, and the more building examples, the better. Yeah.
So
well, and
no
I would,
conclusion for tonight, but that's, I think, where the council would like to have, make an informed decision.
And is it possible to get someone from, Commerce to
No.
do Q&A or?
I watched the whole thing yesterday.
Yeah.
They're very much 100% in favor of MFTE.
well,
And I
it
don't
was the
think that's-
MFTE staff. It was a peer meeting. It was we were the only council members on the call.
No, we weren't. They were from other cities.
It was primarily staff. It's a peer. It's like reporting and stuff like that. It wasn't.
No, I'm just thinking about the tax is still not clear.
But instead, I love the idea of penciling it all out, you figuring it all out. I'll tell you who I want to hear from. I want to hear from a developer.
That's fine.
I want to hear from a developer who pencils this stuff out on a regular basis. And if we did this, if we got rid of the 8-year and we went with the 12-year, where is I want the sweet spot.
That's not an unusual request. Years ago,
they'll be there.
we had Wes Larson here for a study session. We can arrange that if he or a representative so chooses, or one of the other.
That's important. I mean, there is so
That's
much
fine.
bias on this council against developers. I mean,
I think
You're
you need to
refusing to
watch,
meet.
no, I'm gonna push back on that.
you're refusing to meet with the president of the builders
So
association.
hang on. Let's time out. And let's get
Yeah, I
active.
think we need to be careful about making accusations against each other.
So
Yes.
yeah. Anyway, do
Everybody
we?
right now is pretty darned angry. It's really easy to let it spill over.
I'm not angry.
I'm not angry.
Not about
I'm
this.
confused.
Not about this.
But I really do appreciate, I really appreciated what Jeff did back in 2022, which is just a rough back of the envelope, you called it, right? And I appreciate what Eric is saying about let's pencil it out with a specific unit, and see what the rents are gonna be. What I appreciate is that there's an emphasis on wanting equity for our citizens but we're not talking about a lot of units, and we're not talking about a lot of units of equity. What we're talking about really is gaining back some of that, some of the taxes that we're missing out on. But what I understand to be true is that we're still getting the taxes because they're being deferred to other people, so we're not missing out on taxes. So is it about equity or is it about generating revenue? We're spinning our wheels. We could be doing other things.
Or is it about having more housing? You know, when you say it's only a few units, I've got, what, Garrett, how many
Only a few
units in
units
Blue
that
Ridge?
qualify for the reduced.
Right, but that's
rent.
not what this is only about. We're so focused on that 10 or 20%. And MFTE is focused on building multifamily housing.
No worries, Denise. So If it was up to me, I'd probably still stick with the 8, but here's where I'm having the problem. We don't name the applicant, but we had someone do the 8, and then because of the changes in 2022, they upped it to a 12. And it's like, whoa, you already built it under the 8. Why did we allow that in 2022? To me, no. We passed it in 2022 to open up the 8 plus the 12. I think that may have been a mistake because you built it under the guise of the 8 for this thing to pencil out. And then when I was first voting in on all this stuff, and I don't think I was here in 2006 but later on when all these came up, I kept on saying, yeah, but after 8 years, that money, no one's paying any taxes under a false premise, my understanding. So my understanding was they only paid property tax on the land, but not the building. That's what was, I won't say preached to me, but that was told to me. Jane, you were there, you were spoken against it, but that's what was told to council. And now we're getting this new information, and I don't have reason to disbelieve it. But now it turns out that the taxpayers have been paying for that all this time. And when I look at only 5 or 6% of the people getting the benefit, and they're not even the low income people, they're the high, I'm upset. That's what my whole deal is. So I don't know what the right answer is. And that's why I go to numbers.
And still, we now have thousands more housing units in Bremerton because of this.
So do we have
Would we
data?
have those before? I don't know.
What would housing costs be like if we didn't have these?
Exactly. I don't know if we would have had them. I don't know if they would.
Do we have data to verify that tax rates have gone up since the MFTE program's gone into?
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay, so you got a table that shows, thank you. Oh, is that, sorry,
Read the
apologies.
bottom part.
So Jane, do you have enough direction
It'd be
from
20% lower
council
or 0.2%?
for another study session at another time? Okay.
0.2% lower.
I appreciate all the work that you did, and Ann, all the work that you did as well.
Yeah, Ann and Christine, actually.
And Kylie and DCD staff, I think you had some input in making sure that the presentation was accurate. I appreciate that. Go ahead.
There is a big misconception here.
Sure.
That 20 cents added to the tax that people are paying is not making up the 2.3 million that isn't being paid. So there is a lot
So
of
there is a
tax
gap.
burden that is not being.
Okay, so we're not making
It is
it up.
not included when you do the total assessed value. They do not take into account that number, so your total assessed value is lower. So when you apply that to what your levy needs to be, that's where that's making the property owners pay more because you have a smaller denominator. And so if you look on that slide, I know it's hard, it's a lot of numbers, but it's showing you the value that they're paying tax on is the property itself and the commercial. And they're not paying tax on that residential piece. So there is a large piece that will eventually be taxed when the exemption period is over. But as the county is estimating that, it's about 2.3 million.
Okay, so we are losing out on revenue.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
2.3 million a year.
Could you write that down, Ann, please?
Well, that 2.3 includes school taxes because the school isn't getting paid.
There's my.
The port is, that's not 2.3 million.
That
went to
Yeah, but
the
look to see
city.
what would come back to Bremerton.
Which
I used to be a CPA.
Wouldn't have that if it wasn't built.
But you've forgotten all. But it is built.
Because of this great program.
That's right. It wouldn't have been built.
So as advertised, council, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Point is, you look up and Heather's got it open here, March 16th, 2022 is the PowerPoint presentation that we gave you. It has the income level, it has the rent. And it has all the tables of the things.
March
that you were
16th,
asking
22.
for. It's
Thank you.
older data, Thank you. But it
Thank you.
has the rent and the actual rent of some of the projects. That data is all in there for March 16th.
So I'm going to ask staff just to email that to our council, and council do not respond back to that. But that way you guys don't have to go find that.
I'm opening it.
Are you ready to report out?
No. Hey, so as I think a couple of you were missing, but I announced that we wanted to end general council business at 8:30 and go to executive session. So the update on council goals is gonna be pushed again to the next study session. I
I
apologize.
know you were all ready for.
So
I
now,
spent- oh,
and then unless someone has something they urgently need to talk about, like updates or other briefings, if it's really something the council needs to know about, if not, we're gonna go break into executive session and then
This
close
is
out the
kind
meeting.
of time sensitive,
Go ahead.
the environmental stewardship report.
Fine. Also, I'm on low battery, less than 10%.
Okay,
No, wait. The
take that.
environmental responsibility. Whoa.
That's on the in the packet, the environmental
But it's
stewardship ad hoc.
time-sensitive about it.
Yeah, but I said we were gonna push it until 2 weeks from now.
Yes,
Are we gonna,
Are we?
is the climate gonna change in 2 weeks?
Yeah, well.
Oh, God, I asked the wrong question. Of course it is. Oh, my God, the look, the look, the look. No, I'm sorry. What is the urgency why we have to?
it
address
doesn't matter why there's the urgency. If this council wants the meeting to end at 9, have an executive session. I would, however, like it to come before any other stuff. I'd like it to happen before we are all punchy with fatigue, 2 weeks from now.
Okay, understood. I'll look at the agenda and we'll
Thank
try to move things off the agenda and
Okay.
get to this. So I'm sorry for pushing you guys back. I think you understand why we needed to do it. But we'll make a higher priority for 2 weeks from
Okay,
now. Okay,
just before we're exhausted.
before we're exhausted. And technically, we're not exhausted, but I think around this time maybe is less productive than we'd like to be. Okay, with that, I'm not ending the meeting, but we are going to break for executive session for 15 minutes to discuss potential litigation as allowed under RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, parentheses I. Please note that no action is anticipated. So it's at 8:33. We'll reconvene at 8:48.
I bet Randall.
Hey, folks, we're done with the executive session. And before we adjourn, just a reminder that the next council meeting will be on Wednesday, June 18th, starting at 5:30 p.m. in the first floor meeting chambers of the Nordics Government Center. Can we open that door in case members of the public want to flood in here for the bus?
Open floodgate.
Is there right?
I was waiting there. She didn't have her water bottle.
Don't want to exclude the masses. Still waiting, but okay. The public is invited to attend in person or remotely, but anyone wishing to speak in public recognition via Zoom must submit the request through the city clerk by calling 360-473-5323 at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. Folks, this meeting